Chapter 7:18. Wow, brother, look at that great white shark. It's so pretty. Hulaina pointed at the largest great white shark in front of them and whispered, "It's as white as snow. I want to touch it." The great white shark, Wang Feng. However, Hulaina spoke very softly. She was probably afraid of angering these great white sharks. He had heard from old Shan that these great white sharks were the mounts of the sea god. They were not simple creatures to be the mounts of the sea god. Wang Feng also felt that these great white sharks were not bad. However, if he really wanted to touch them, he could forget about it. If they really fought, these great white sharks would be very troublesome. Fortunately, Wang Feng was pleasantly surprised by the blue flag. He could even sense that these great white sharks were a little afraid of the blue flag in his hand. After leaving this group of great white sharks, they were only a few hundred meters away from the sea god's island. Their flying swords landed safely on the shore of the sea god's island. The moment they stepped onto the island, the four of them felt a comfortable and joyful feeling in their limbs. The energy here was very pure. It was like the pure evil energy in the Rakshasa's secret realm. However, it was neither evil energy nor light energy here. Instead, it was a gentle energy that made one feel comfortable. As far as the eye could see, there was a lush forest with many rare plants growing in an orderly manner. Some of them were plants that Wang Feng had not seen in the Great Star Do forest. There were all kinds of unknown flowers and plants. Even though they were so far away, they could still smell a delicate fragrance. A gust of wind blew past the beach. It smelled like the ocean. It was a refreshing smell that made one want to take in deep breath. Here, one could feel a gentle and comfortable feeling at almost every moment. In the distance, they could see the boundless ocean. When they looked up, they could see the blue sky and white clouds. Relying on this enormous sea god's island, they felt like they were in a world without any impurities. What a beautiful place, Hulaina muttered to herself. Beautiful scenery could always inspire one to look forward to the future. At this moment, Hulaina thought of many things. She even thought of a name. It was only when Wang Feng spoke to remind her that she suddenly came to her senses. She hurriedly followed him while blushing slightly. As they walked, Wang Feng discovered that the sea god's island was similar to the Rakshasa secret realm. There was a mysterious energy on the island that blocked the senses of soul masters. Even with Wang Feng's spiritual power, he couldn't sense it from a distance, and there was an extremely strong rebound. Presumably, there was some kind of restriction in the unseen world. Seeing this, Wang Feng did not intend to use his mental power to sense it. The sea god's island seemed to be extremely huge. Just the shore alone stretched as far as the eye could see. The three of them walked into the forest. After walking for about an hour, they met three people. "What day is it today? Another group of people actually came to our sea god's island?" The three of them were wearing yellow robes that seemed to be specially made. The leader was a man in his 30s. His face didn't look very surprised, but his expression was still a little repulsed. "Hello, we're here because of your reputation. We want to participate in the Sea God's Island's test and join the Sea God's Island." Hulaina stepped forward and said politely. Other than passing the test to join the Sea God's Island, they also wanted to understand the situation on the Sea God's Island. Naturally, they couldn't act recklessly. The man laughed and said, "You foreign soul masters really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. Anyway, there was a group of people just now. The few of you won't make a difference. From the looks of it, you guys rushed here with great difficulty. You even passed through the territory of the great white demon sharks. I'm sure you have some confidence in yourselves. Come with me." The man seemed to know a lot about the great white demon sharks outside. He didn't try to dissuade them. In fact, the soul masters that could enter the Sea God's Island from the outside were more or less strong. Not to mention how dangerous the sea was, just the great white demon soul sharks outside was actually a very severe test. Without special methods, it wasn't easy to enter the Sea God's Island. Therefore, the soul masters of the sea god's island didn't chase the four of them away. They were probably experienced. It should be Shrek's 7 monsters, right? The 3 of them followed behind the man. As they walked forward, they talked about the other group of people that the man mentioned. Wang Feng sensed them slightly. The 3 of them should be soul masters patrolling the sea god's island. They weren't very strong, but their soul power was still above rank 40. You foreign soul masters, let me tell you the rules of the sea god's island. The most important thing is that you can't do anything on the sea god's island. Otherwise, you'll be severely punished. The man's tone was a little strict. Although the sea god's island is very big, if you dare to hurt anyone on the sea god's island, our enforcement team will immediately arrest you. The 3 patrolling members of the sea god's island weren't very strong. They were only around rank 40. But when they said this, they were full of confidence. The sea god's island had given them confidence. No one dared to do anything here. Wang Feng thought for a moment. How many titled Douluo are there on the sea god's island? There should be quite a few. Compared to the Rakshasa's secret realm, there are only 4. However, the Moro clan in the Rakshasa's secret realm had special abilities. Soul masters from the Moro clan were born immune to physical attack. They wouldn't be at a disadvantage against any titled Douluo. In addition, the Rakshasa's secret realm was filled with endless evil energy. The Moro clan was very strong. Hulaina and the other 2 nodded. They wouldn't violate the rules of the sea god's island. Not long after, the 3 of them led Wang Feng and the rest out of the forest. It was a feeling of enlightenment. There was a huge lake in front of them. It was a very regular circle. The lake was at least 1,000 meters in diameter. There was a triangular platform in the center. On the platform was a stone pillar that was several meters tall. The stone pillar was very regular, and there were countless mysterious ancient words and symbols carved on it. Streaks of energy were released from the stone pillar, causing the lake water around them to ripple. At the same time, Wang Feng saw Tang San and the rest. They seemed to have just arrived. Didn't they arrive 2 days earlier than us? Evil Moon was surprised. Why are they only here now? Wang Feng thought for a moment. It shouldn't have been so smooth. After all, he had a flying sword and a blue flag. He had even dealt with the great white demon shark and entered the sea god's island. The entire process didn't take long. Alright, you guys wait here. I'll report to the seahorse holy pillar first. The yellow-robed man instructed. The seahorse holy pillar was the middle-aged man in black who was standing below the stone pillar. Chapter 719. This is the sea ocean. That's the seahorse holy pillar. The other 2 men explained. The sea god's island has the 7 holy pillars. All of them have the power of the sea god, and have passed the sea god's 6th black test. On the other hand, the holy pillar can be used to test soul masters. Different tests represent the expectations that the sea god has for the participant. The 7 holy pillars. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. Normally, those who passed the god's test were very powerful. Titled Douluo, but their soul power ranks shouldn't be high enough. Wang Feng's eyes narrowed. Although he didn't use his senses, he could guess a little from their auras. The 7 holy pillars meant 7 titled Douluo? Wang Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The sea god's island was very powerful. The Luosha secret realm was only half complete. But logically speaking, Wang Feng felt that the titled Douluo of the Moro clan were stronger. Even in the outside world, they were stronger. And their average soul power ranks were higher. Even the weakest one was around rank 94. Although the ghost Douluo was completely suppressed by Wang Feng's karmic fire, it was very difficult for other titled Douluo to deal with. Although titled Douluo seemed to be only rank 10. But there were many subdivisions among them. For example, these titled Douluo who passed the god's test were far stronger than their peers because they had a part of the sea god's power. Even a little bit of it was enough. At this moment, the man who went to report said, "You're all soul masters. If you want to enter the holy pillar, you have to pass the sea first. You're the same as the 9 people before you. But the 9 of them have already passed the seahorse holy pillars test. As he spoke, the man pointed at Tang San and the others in the distance. At this moment, the seahorse Douluo also saw the 4 of them. At the same time, Tang San and the others who had just passed the seahorse holy pillars test also saw Wang Feng and the others. They really came to the sea god's island. Dai Mubai whispered. After a long and arduous journey through the sea, they were finally able to cross the swarm of great white demon sharks with the help of Tang San's vast sea heaven and earth shroud. They were barely able to reach the sea god's island safely, but they were still knocked out for half a day before waking up. It seems like we went out to sea earlier than them. Furthermore, without Xiao San and disciple Ji Xiang, they shouldn't have been able to come to the sea god's island. Oscar pondered for a moment before he said, in other words, it would take at least 2 days for them to arrive at the sea god's island. They're 2 days slower than us. How did they arrive at the sea god's island so quickly? Those great white demon soul sharks don't seem to be that simple, right? Oscar's heart palpitated at the thought. Have you forgotten that Pope Diff in white is among them? Tang San's eyes fell on the black figure. The 4 of them had disguised themselves. Although it wasn't easy to recognize them, that was only for outsiders. They were all very familiar with each other. Looks like you 2 know each other? The seahorse Douluo, who was also dressed in black, looked at the 9 of them in astonishment. The strength and talent of these 9 people were extraordinary. All these years on the sea god's island, he had never seen anyone who could reach such a level at such a young age. 6 of them were in their 20s, and they were all soul emperors. It was unbelievable. The other 3 girls were more special, but they were also very strong, especially the food-type soul master with the white beer martial soul. Yes. Esteemed Seahorse Douluo, these 4 can be considered our opponent. Ma Hongjun snorted coldly. The Seahorse Douluo was astonished when he heard this. The strength and talent of these 9 people had exceeded his expectations. How could they be their opponents? Ma Hongjun didn't say much. He didn't say that Hu Laina and the others were from the Martial Soul Hall. This was because he had no evidence. The Martial Soul Hall had invaded the Sea God's Island before. If they knew that the other party was from the Martial Soul Hall, they might have chased them off the island. However, they didn't have any evidence. The people on the Sea God's Island didn't go out. They didn't know anything about the outside world. If they couldn't produce any evidence to prove that the other party was from the Martial Soul Hall, the Seahorse Douluo might think that they were slandering them. If that happened, the Seahorse Douluo would think that they were slandering them. It wouldn't be worth it. Therefore, they might as well say that they were their opponent. At this moment, the Seahorse Douluo's eyes flashed. He stomped his foot. In a split second, 8 water pillars suddenly rose from the lake in all directions. Each water pillar was at least 30 meters tall. The 8 water pillars intertwined and formed a huge waterfall on the only path that led to the holy pillar. It was only a few meters wide. From time to time, one could see many aquatic soul beasts leaping through the waterfall. When he saw this, the man who had led Wang Feng here said, "The test is to pass. You'll be able to see the seahorse holy pillar after you pass through this waterfall. Otherwise, please leave. Take note that flying is prohibited above this waterfall. You can only rely on your own strength to pass through this waterfall." Hulaina furrowed her brows as she looked at the waterfall. It was a torrent formed by the collision of 4 pillars of water, and the force of the impact was extremely terrifying. If a normal soul master wasn't a soul beast of the sea, the slightest carelessness would have caused all of their bones to fall apart. "You're a team. Discuss this among yourselves," Wang Feng said. If they couldn't even pass this test, they would have wasted their time by staying by his side. If they stayed by his side, it was fine. Their intelligence should be raised, right? Hulaina and the other 2 nodded. After about a minute, the 3 of them came up with a plan. Among them, Hulaina was the one who played the most important role. This was because she was a spiritual type, control type soul master. However, there was nothing they could do about it. Furthermore, Hulaina was the first to make a move. 6 soul rings lit up from her body. After the beautiful heavenly fox was attached to her body, she leaped into the air. The light in her eyes was released towards the aquatic soul beasts in the torrent. The pink fog dispersed. Under this pink fog, the aquatic soul beasts suddenly surged towards her. Most of these soul beasts were around 1,000 years old. There were very few 10,000-year soul beasts. At this moment, they lined up in front of Hulaina. It was as if they were waiting for her to choose. Hulaina giggled. She was extremely charming, and even these soul beasts were not immune to her charms. The pink light in her eyes and the soul bone in her skull allowed her to control these soul beasts in an instant. Following this, Hulaina jumped into 3 seahorses, 3 dolphins, and 2 sea crabs. As every torrent was in the opposite direction, it was difficult for her to cross it with just one soul beast. Under Hulaina's command, the 8 sea beasts came to a stop in the middle of the 8 pillars of water. After that, she gently leapt into the air and stepped on one of the soul beast's bodies. He stepped on the body of the 8th sea spirit beast and leaped over with ease. It was quite elegant. Chapter 720. What a powerful control-type soul emperor. The seahorse Douluo's eyes lit up. She's a fox-type spirit control-type soul master. Her martial soul must have mutated, and there must be something strange about it. She shouldn't have been able to make the aquatic soul beasts so obedient just by using her spiritual power. She shouldn't have been able to make them understand her orders so quickly. Tang San and the others were also surprised. They didn't expect Hulaina to pass through it so easily. After hearing the seahorse Douluo's words, they were also a little confused. In fact, it was impossible to make the aquatic soul beasts do this with just her charm alone. However, Hulaina had Star's consciousness in her skull. Star's consciousness had always been stable. Wang Feng would often sense it. Using Star's consciousness to give orders, it was easy to communicate with her. Next was Evil Moon. Evil Moon had been by Wang Feng's side for a long time, and had always wanted to use the mysterious underworld flying sword like Wang Feng did. However, it was difficult for Evil Moon to do so. Sometimes Wang Feng thought about it. Without the front secret word, his spiritual power wouldn't have improved so much. He couldn't use his spiritual power to control the flying sword. Although Evil Moon's spiritual power had improved a lot, he still couldn't do it. However, he could still use his soul power to control the flying sword. Evil Moon did well in this aspect. Along the way, Wang Feng had given them a lot of burden, which allowed their control of their soul power to improve rapidly. After Evil Moon released 2 moonblades, he combined them into a disc and used his soul power to control it to land in the torrent. After that, he stepped on the disc formed by the moonblades and glided through the 8 water pillars by surfing. Not bad. The seahorse Douluo nodded slightly. Evil Moon was about 28 or 29 years old. To be able to have such strength, his talent was extraordinary. In fact, the 3 of them were able to become the golden generation of the Martial Soul Hall. They had killed many young soul masters in the Martial Soul Hall. How could their talent be bad? His control of his soul power is also very exquisite. The seahorse Douluo had a look of admiration on his face. Tang San and the others were also a little surprised. The last one was Yan. Yan's method was very simple and violent. It was really very violent. He directly used martial soul possession, and then gave himself a buff. His whole body was covered in a fiery red light, and then he walked the 500 meters step by step. No matter how the torrent attacked, Yan remained motionless. This was the simplest and most direct way to test a person's strength. Although he didn't use any tricks, Wang Feng admired him. Yan's martial spirit was somewhat similar to Zhang Xiaotian's martial spirit. They were both extremely powerful beast martial spirits. This method was actually the most correct one. There was the meaning of great skill appearing to be clumsy. With his tyrannical soul power, domineering body, and blazing martial soul, he directly walked over. All the water that hit him evaporated. It was a display of his tyrannical strength. The strength of these three people seems to have improved a lot in the past 5 years. Ma Hongjun looked at Yin. This guy's martial soul is not much weaker than mine. His soul power rank is even higher than Little Three's. Tang San was currently level 67, probably not even level 68 yet. However, 5 years ago, Tang San and the others were 9 ranks lower than this golden generation, on average. Each of them had improved by at least 20 ranks. In comparison, Hulaina and the others had only improved by 10 ranks. Since when are there so many talented soul masters in the outside world? The seahorse Douluo's eyes were filled with admiration and sighed. What about the last one? Hearing this, Tang San and the others suddenly fell silent. Hulaina and the other 2 stood quietly in a row, waiting like obedient children. Looking at all of you, the last one seems to be a little special? The seahorse Douluo's gaze landed on Wang Feng, and there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. A little. Ma Hongjun felt a little dry in his mouth. Hearing this, the seahorse Douluo smiled. At this moment, Wang Feng moved. Logically speaking, this was the seahorse Douluo's test. Even if the seahorse Douluo had been bestowed with the seahorse Douluo's godly strength, it wouldn't be difficult for Wang Feng to beat him up. Not to mention the test he had given her. Sword, come. Wang Feng stood where he was and let out a low roar. In an instant, the countless sharp blades formed a gigantic sword in the air. Slash. Wang Feng's mind moved, and the huge treasure sword slashed towards the torrents formed by the 8 angel water pillars. The 7 murders sword plays sword of the 7 murders sword plays sword severing the southern mountain. As the cold light shone, all the water pillars turned into raindrops that filled the sky. It directly broke the 8 water pillars formed by the seahorse Douluo's soul power. Wang Feng slowly walked over from the path that was filled with rain. Naturally, the raindrops were swept away by his soul power, and he was still as clean as ever. The seahorse Douluo's pupils contracted. He seemed to have casually formed the 8 water pillars just now, but he had used part of the holy pillar's strength, his immense soul power, and the strength of his domain to form the torrents of water pillars that were dozens of meters tall. He didn't expect it to be broken so easily. Especially the sword technique that the other party used to control the sword. It was terrifying. With the seahorse Douluo's knowledge, he could naturally tell that the other party was using vast spiritual power to control the sword. That was why he was able to break the 8 water pillars so easily. Furthermore, his soul power undulations weren't strong. The seahorse Douluo couldn't even sense the other party's strength. He didn't even release his martial soul. That huge treasure sword was more like a soul bone. Wang Feng slowly walked over and glanced at Tang San. Naturally, he didn't have any other thoughts. Furthermore, he actually had a few motives for coming here. Firstly, Bibidon had gone through the 8th test in advance. He thought that she would be able to become a god in the next 4 to 5 years. In that case, Tang San and the rest had probably just passed the test on Sea God's Island. Once they returned, they would have to face Bibidon, who had become a god. Needless to say, they would be beaten up. Wang Feng felt that even if he was over rank 70, he wouldn't be able to defeat a god. He should be able to try at rank 90. Hence, once his identity was exposed, he would also be beaten up. Not to mention that Qianrenxue was probably going to become a god too. The Luosha secret realm was Wang Feng's typical mistake. A huge mistake. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Wang Feng was not a god. There was no way he could be 100% sure about anything. However, logically speaking, at the end of the Luosha secret realm, Wang Feng felt that there was a 99% chance that Bibidon's god seat would be destroyed. He didn't know how Bibidon managed to trigger that 1% chance. It actually caused such a huge reversal. All of Wang Feng's previous efforts were in vain. Hence, Wang Feng needed to help Tang San and the rest pass the test quickly on Sea God's Island. At the same time, he needed to become stronger. At the very least, he had to be over rank 70. There was another important point. 3 years later, Bibidon would most likely bring the 1,000 Dao streams to Sea God's Island. When that time came, it would be a turning point. Wang Feng didn't know what to do if Bibidon brought the 1,000 Dao streams to Sea God's Island 3 years later. P.S. My eyes hurt a little. Chapter 721. Wang Feng was speechless when he thought of this. Wang Feng walked over to Hulaina and the others and looked at the seahorse Douluo. There was a strange look in the seahorse Douluo's eyes at this moment. "You're not young, are you?" The seahorse Douluo looked at Wang Feng and said coldly. He was shocked by Wang Feng's strength and methods. A Soul Emperor couldn't have broken his 8 water pillars with a single sword. "Is there an age requirement for the Sea God's Islands test?" Wang Feng asked calmly. "Anyone can enter the Sea God's Island as long as they are recognized by the Sea God." The seahorse Douluo narrowed his eyes. "There's no age requirement, but I suspect that you're from an unknown background." The seahorse Douluo was a little puzzled by Wang Feng's strength. The others could be considered geniuses at such a young age. However, the seahorse Douluo was confident that Tang Wulin would definitely be an extraordinary figure even if he were to be placed in the outside world. Why would such a powerful individual want to come to the Sea God's Island? "Are you suspecting that we're from the Martial Spirit Hall?" Wang Feng looked at the seahorse Douluo and suddenly asked. The seahorse Douluo's expression didn't change, but his aura became colder. "Would you believe me if I said that we are?" Wang Feng looked at Tang San and the others before looking at Hulaina and the others. Wang Feng released his aura slightly. The seahorse Douluo was slightly stunned. He frowned and sensed these people. The black-robed man in front of him exuded an aura as pure as the sea. It was closer to nature. He didn't seem like the soul masters from the Martial Spirit Hall who had attacked them more than 20 years ago. "So your suspicions are useless." Wang Feng looked at the holy pillar behind the seahorse Douluo. "Why don't we hand it over to the Sea God? The Sea God's Islands test is given by the Sea God. If the Sea God approves you, I'm sure you'll be able to clear your doubts, right?" Wang Feng knew that these tests were given by the gods. Wang Feng already knew about them when he was in the Rakshasa's secret realm. The seahorse Douluo suddenly laughed and said, "Indeed. Since you want to participate in the Sea God's Islands test, you should be prepared." What the other party said made sense. If these people were really people with bad intentions, it would be impossible for them to gain the approval of the Sea God. With that, the seahorse Douluo carried the few of them to the front of the holy pillar. He said plainly, "Follow the order in which you passed the test." Hearing this, everyone immediately stood properly. Since Tang San and the others passed the test first, they were naturally the first to take the test. The group was somewhat excited. Whether it was Tang San's team of 9 or Hulaina's team of 3. Before coming here, Bibidon had told Hulaina that the Sea God's Island was a special place, and the tests here were very important. Similarly, Tang San and the other 8 people were a little excited. Wang Feng was the only one who remained calm. He knew that the Sea God's Islands test should be the same as the Rakshasa mystic realm. However, he didn't know how dangerous it was. At this moment, the seahorse Douluo walked to the side of the holy pillar and pressed his hands against it as he muttered something. Then, the surrounding lake water began to boil. The holy pillar's energy seemed to have been activated, emitting a faint blue light. Even the words on it began to flicker like the stars in the sky. Wang Feng could vaguely feel a majestic force from the pillar. It was somewhat similar to the statue in the Rakshasa temple. After activating the holy pillar, the seahorse Douluo looked at everyone and pointed at the first person in front. He said, "Come forward and look at the holy pillar. The holy pillar can connect to the sea god, and it will give you the corresponding test. I'll say it in advance. Although there are many types of tests given by the Holy Pillar, they are all extremely dangerous. The more difficult the test, the lower the chance of survival. Most of the tests are only about success or failure. There's no luck involved. Once you accept the test, you can't escape. It's not too late to back out now. The seahorse Douluo swept his gaze across everyone. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Although these continental soul masters were geniuses, many of them had died in the test. However, no one answered him. Right now, they were only looking at the Holy Pillar. I'll go first. Dai Mubai laughed. If we were afraid of death, we wouldn't have come to the Sea God's Island. After he finished speaking, Dai Mubai walked in front of the Holy Pillar. The seahorse Douluo looked at Dai Mubai. After that, he flicked his finger, and an intense blue light landed on Dai Mubai's body. In the next moment, the Holy Pillar started to shine intensely from the bottom. At the bottom, the light was blue. Then it was white. Finally, it was yellow. At the same time, the words on the Holy Pillar seemed to have been activated. They flowed with different colors of light. After the yellow light, it reached the middle of the Holy Pillar and became purple. After entering the purple light, the speed at which the light rose became much slower. Finally, it reached the top of the Holy Pillar and became black. Finally, the light stopped at the level of black. After that, the black light shot out and landed in front of Dai Mubai. It formed a black light screen. There were densely packed golden words on it. Finally, it imprinted in between Dai Mubai's eyebrows, forming a thumb-sized, six-pointed black star. Dai Mubai's body trembled. He seemed to have realized something. The seahorse Douluo frowned slightly. He looked at Dai Mubai and shook his head. It's the sixth black test. His tone was very strange. He sounded a little shocked and a little regretful. After he finished speaking, the seahorse Douluo looked at the puzzled crowd and explained. The test is divided into different types according to the colors. The black test is one of the most difficult tests. It's also the test with the highest mortality rate. After so many years on the Sea God's Island, only 7 people have passed the black test. They are our 7 holy pillars. The 6th black test is even more difficult. What he meant was that Dai Mubai's chances of passing the test were very low. The chances of him dying were very high. Furthermore, the seahorse Douluo had said that this test was unavoidable. Once it was decided, it couldn't be changed. There was no way to avoid it. Wang Feng knew that the black screen of light and the golden text likely represented the power of the sea god. When he thought of this, Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. When the power of the Rakshasa god descended, part of it was absorbed by the blood traces of his dark angel martial soul. In the end, there was only one test. Will the power of the sea god's test be absorbed by the blood traces? Wang Feng thought about it and felt that it was unlikely. The sea god seemed to be slightly stronger than the Rakshasa god. Furthermore, their powers were different. The power of the Rakshasa god was evil. It was compatible with the power of the blood traces. However, the power of the sea god should be completely different. Chapter 7:22. The Rakshasa god gave me the true god's 9 tests. Will the sea god give me 9 tests too? Wang Fengxin thought to himself, I don't think so. The sea god's successor should be Little 3. He still has a treasure on him. I don't really need it. The sea god's island is very suitable for cultivation. I should cultivate to rank 70 as soon as possible. At this moment, the seahorse Douluo's words didn't scare them at all. Instead, they were even more excited. 6th black rank test? Dai Mubai looked at the seahorse Douluo and couldn't help but laugh proudly. Doesn't this mean that my aptitude isn't inferior to the 7 holy pillars of the sea god's island? I'm actually that strong? The seahorse Douluo looked at Dai Mubai speechlessly. He could only sigh in his heart. These land-based soul masters really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They still don't know how perverted this test is. Having the aptitude for the 6th black rank test doesn't mean that you can pass it. Let's go, let me do it. Ma Hongjun said excitedly. Senior, is there anything stronger than the 6th black rank test? I feel that my talent and aptitude are much stronger than Boss Dai. The 6th black rank test isn't suitable for me. When Dai Mubai heard this, he couldn't help but kick him. Fatty, who gave you such confidence? Ma Hongjun smiled cheekily and dodged it. He walked excitedly to the holy pillar and looked at the seahorse Douluo. The seahorse Douluo. He wanted to laugh. He looked at Ma Hongjun and slowly explained, there is, but don't think about it. It's not something you can achieve. The 6th black rank test is already very rare for you. However, you are still so optimistic. It's worthy of praise. Ma Hongjun pursed his lips and looked like he didn't believe him. Seeing this, the seahorse Douluo didn't say anything. He pointed at Ma Hongjun with a blue light. The holy pillar immediately lit up. In the end, it stopped above the black light like Dai Mubai and didn't exceed it. 6th black rank test. The seahorse Douluo was stunned. What's going on? 2 6th black rank tests in a row. Normally, I wouldn't even meet one in a few years. Ma Hongjun looked at the black screen of light in front of him. With a light grab, the black screen of light entered his glabella. That shouldn't be the case. My talent should be higher than Boss Dai. Ma Hongjun rubbed his chin, looking pensive. Dai Mubai jokingly scolded again. Fatty, why don't we practice alone? Let's see if your talent is higher or mine is higher. His soul power rank was much higher than Ma Hongjun's. If they fought one-on-one, Ma Hongjun definitely wouldn't be able to defeat him. Ma Hongjun chuckled and walked back while touching the mark on his forehead. These 7 people's talents and qualifications should be about the same, except for Xiao San. Wang Feng looked at the 7 of them. However, that Bai Qinxiang and Oscar's girlfriend should be worse. It's a pity for Bai Qinxiang. If she could get closer to Fatty, her talent would improve a lot. Of course, the intimacy that Wang Feng was talking about was not as simple as grabbing and touching. Instead, it is similar to the kind of dual cultivation in immortal cultivation. Although Ma Hongjun and Bai Qinxiang's progress was fast, it was impossible for them to reach that stage. However, there would be opportunities in the future. Let me try too. Oscar walked forward and looked at the holy pillar. He said, I'm not asking for much. I just want the same as Boss Dai. The seahorse Douluo didn't say anything. He pointed at the pillar with a blue light. The holy pillar immediately lit up. However, it stopped at the tip of the black light. It couldn't fill up the last section and light up the topmost layer of the holy pillar. However, the seahorse Douluo's mouth twitched. Another 6th black armor exam. Among the 7 holy pillars, only the sea dragon Douluo was a 6th black test. Oscar nodded in satisfaction. Chi-Chi, come and try too. It seems quite interesting. Xin Lingqi made a sound of acknowledgement and stepped out first. Black is so ugly. Ning Rongrong frowned as she looked at the black 6-pointed star on Dai Mubai's and the others' foreheads. Zhu Zhuqing, I don't want black. I like pink or light red. What about you? Zhu Zhuqing. Wang Feng was speechless when he heard Ning Rongrong's words. Are you kidding me? You like it, the seahorse Douluo also heard Ning Rongrong's muttering. His face darkened, and he felt a little stuffy in his chest. What's wrong with these kids? All of them. Wang Feng glanced at Ning Rongrong. Coincidentally, Ning Rongrong also sensed Wang Feng's gaze. She glared fiercely at Wang Feng. Her ferocious gaze seemed to want to cut Wang Feng into pieces. Wang Feng turned his head and looked at Xin Lingqi. Xin Lingqi's talent was on display at this moment. This was the 4th black test, second only to the 6th black test. Wang Feng thought for a moment. If Xin Lingqi consumed the immortal herb, she should be able to pass the 6th black test. Xin Lingqi didn't look very disappointed. she still had a smile on her face. She didn't feel depressed because her talent wasn't as good as theirs. At this moment, Bai Qinxiang hesitated and glanced at Ma Hongjun. Xiang, why don't you go and try too? Ma Hongjun whispered, this sea god's test is just one thing. Talent only represents one aspect of a soul master. It doesn't represent everything. It also doesn't represent how much I like you. Bai Qinxiang rolled her eyes at Ma Hongjun. However, she still took a deep breath and walked up the holy pillar. After going through 3/6 black tests, the seahorse Douluo was already very calm. The holy pillars lit up one by one, from blue to white to yellow, and finally stopped at purple. However, it was very faint. The second purple test. The seahorse Douluo heaved a sigh of relief. A relaxed smile appeared on his face. Although the purple test is very difficult, it's still possible to pass. The success rate is also much higher than the black test. Finally, there's a normal test. This made the seahorse Douluo feel very relaxed. Bai Qinxiang still looked a little disappointed when she saw this. However, it quickly disappeared. Along the way, she had already gotten used to the gap between herself and these people. Seeing Bai Qinxiang walk back, Ma Hongjun quickly held her hand and chuckled. Xiang, in my heart, you are the 6th black test. No, you are the highest test. That's enough. My heart isn't as weak as you think. Bai Qinxiang looked at Ma Hongjun. Her beautiful face suddenly turned red. She seemed to have thought of something. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. It's my turn. Ning Rongrong jumped up the steps of the holy pillar. She said crisply, Senior, I don't want to take the black test. A girl's forehead is so black. It's so ugly. I think Xiang's purple color is pretty good. I don't want the black test. I want the purple test too. Her words made the seahorse Douluo laugh. He looked at Ning Rongrong, annoyed and amused. Chapter 723. The Holy Pillar judges all of you according to the sea god's will. The seahorse Douluo lowered his voice and said, It's not something I can change. Ning Rongrong pursed her lips. Bai Qinxiang was a little touched. She knew that Ning Rongrong said that on purpose. Rongrong has changed. She knows how to take care of others' feelings. She's become a caring little girl. Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong and felt a little emotional. At this moment, the seahorse Douluo pointed at Ning Rongrong. The holy pillar quickly lit up. However, it was a little different this time. Wang Feng was also watching. As for Tang San and the rest's test, Wang Feng knew that Little Three was definitely going to take the 9 tests of the sea god. He also didn't know what Rongrong was thinking on the holy pillar. After the black light passed, the topmost layer suddenly lit up, forming a bright red light. The bright red light rushed out of the holy pillar. It even shot into the clouds. It was an extraordinary display of power. Red rank 7 test, the seahorse Douluo was stunned. He looked at Ning Rongrong and felt a little incredulous. The red rank 7 test was much rarer than the black rank 6 test. Furthermore, the nature of the test was very different. After a while, the red light slowly descended. It turned into a red 7-pointed star and landed in between Ning Rongrong's eyebrows. It made Ning Rongrong even more charming. Ning Rongrong touched her forehead. She didn't think of this test at first. Instead, she took out an exquisite mirror from her soul tool and looked at her reflection. After that, she nodded in satisfaction. It looks pretty good. Everyone was speechless. Elder, is the red rank 7 test above the black rank 6 test? Tang San asked as he saw that his friends were all being tested. The seahorse Douluo looked at Ning Rongrong respectfully and said, The 7 red tests are also known as the 7 top-tier tests. This test is completely different from the 6th black grade test. Once the 7th black grade test appears, it means that the Sea God's Island will have a new great deacon. If she passes the test, she will be the successor to our Sea God's Island. After hearing this, Tang San and the others were enlightened. No wonder the seahorse Douluo was suddenly so respectful. Wang Feng was also a little surprised. Rongrong had the potential? Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong with a strange feeling. Rongrong's aptitude shouldn't be that high, right? What kind of concept was the head consecrator? The martial spirit palaces Thousand Dalu and the Sea God's Islands Possessi were both extremely powerful peerless Douluo. On the other hand, Ning Rongrong was an auxiliary-type soul master. After becoming a great reverend, her fighting strength was much weaker than other soul masters of the same rank. For a great reverend, one must be extremely powerful, right? Was it really okay for the sea god to do this? Wang Feng was a little puzzled. Since it appeared, there must be a reason for it. However, thinking about it, Ning Rongrong's martial soul had undergone a huge change. It belonged to the kind of martial soul mutation that had greatly improved. Perhaps her talent was just a little bit stronger? Their talents and aptitudes are very high. Evil Moon and the others couldn't help but mutter, "Why is the gap so huge?" Although they hadn't tried it yet, the three of them already had an estimate in their hearts. It couldn't be so exaggerated. Wang Feng could tell what the three of them were thinking. He thought to himself, "Have you eaten any immortal herbs? Although you have been by my side for a while, it's impossible for you to reach the level of Tang San and the others. Rongrong, you don't seem to care about your test at all. This 7th black grade test is probably much stronger than our 6th black grade test." Dai Mubai couldn't help but say. "I don't care," Ning Rongrong snorted softly. She giggled and said, "For a girl, whether she looks good or not is the most important thing." Shen Lingqi touched the mark on her forehead and nodded in agreement. A girl with a black mark between her eyebrows really didn't look good. It wasn't that she didn't look good, but it didn't match her temperament. Bai Chenxiang also touched her forehead. From Ning Rongrong's perspective, she was a little satisfied. After all, purple did look good. Although the 7th black grade test is difficult, in reality, once it appears, it means that you will definitely pass. Everyone was astonished by the seahorse Douluo's words. There's such a thing? Wang Feng couldn't help it. This is too much. Ning Rongrong didn't feel anything. She only wanted to become more beautiful. She could see that Wang Feng would be smitten by her. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel happy. After everyone exclaimed for a while, Zhu Zhuqing walked up. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. Zhu Zhuqing had the meteoric tear on her. Over the past 5 years, although Zhu Zhuqing didn't really understand the effects of the meteoric tear, she had subtly changed a lot. In terms of talent and aptitude, she wasn't much inferior to Tang San. She was the strongest among them. Zhu Zhuqing had a cold personality. She was also more taciturn. She didn't like to talk much. She walked up to the holy pillar without saying a word. The seahorse Douluo's worldview had been overturned for so many years by this group of people. However, he had no regrets now that he could see the 7th black grade test. The seahorse Douluo looked at the girl in front of him. The blue light from his finger landed on Zhu Zhuqing's body. In the next moment, the light shot up from the holy pillar at a speed visible to the naked eye. The light turned black in an instant and finally turned red. It was the same as Ning Rongrong's, but the light was even denser. However, it was still the 7th black grade test. The 2nd black grade test, the seahorse Douluo couldn't help but look at Zhu Zhuqing. He was stunned. In comparison, Tang San and the others weren't that shocked. It was very simple. Zhu Zhuqing's improvement over the past few years had been too fast. It was as if her talent had mutated. Dai Mubai's soul power rank was higher than Zhu Zhuqing's, but she had already surpassed him half a year ago. Her cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. Furthermore, based on her performance in battle, her foundation was extremely solid. The Grandmaster originally suspected that Zhu Zhuqing had used some improper method. However, after listening to Zhu Zhuqing's explanation, he understood a little. Zhu Zhuqing didn't mention how Wang Feng had saved her in the pontiff's palace. She didn't even know how Wang Feng had saved her. However, she felt that her heart was very special during her cultivation. It seemed to have been modified. Not only did it greatly increase her cultivation speed, but it also changed the quality of her body. Her talent and fighting strength were constantly improving. Even if the change was not obvious, over the course of 5 years, the accumulation of time would make the change very obvious. A red 7-pointed star appeared on Zhu Zhuqing's forehead. It added to her cold aura and made her even more charming. Zhu Zhuqing walked back silently. As she walked down, she stole a glance at Wang Feng. Chapter 724. Who else? The seahorse Douluo's voice trembled. That kid with the hammer. He was referring to Tang San. Tang San nodded slightly and walked up with Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu was unconscious, so Tang San had to carry her up. Wang Feng watched carefully. Soon, the holy pillar lit up. This time, it was faster than the previous few times. After the red light at the top of the holy pillar lit up, many different lights lit up below. They intersected and shot into the sky, forming a dazzling golden light. This must be the 9 tests of the sea god. Wang Feng could feel the surging energy in the holy pillar. He had to admit that it was slightly stronger than the 9 tests of the true god. He could only feel it from the energy undulations. Wang Feng shook his head. The main character was still the main character. In terms of talent, Wang Feng felt that Little 3 was slightly weaker than Bibidan. However, it was a pity that she had consumed 2 immortal herbs. In addition, she had treasures and cultivated special technique. She was definitely stronger than Bibidan, who only had twin martial souls. The golden light gathered like a whirlpool. Finally, a red light separated and landed on Xiao Wu. However, it was very faint. It was much fainter than Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing's 7 tests of the pinnacle. Is that the pinnacle trial? But what kind of trial did this child trigger? The seahorse Douluo was stunned as he looked at the couple in front of him. The pinnacle trial was very strange. However, he had never seen the golden light before. The golden light turned into a huge golden light. There were mysterious ancient words in it. Finally, it gathered in between Tang San's eyebrows and formed the symbol of a trident. After a moment, the light shrank. Everyone looked at Tang San in shock. Say, Senior, what trial is this? Dai Mubai swallowed his saliva and asked. The seahorse Douluo was silent for a moment. He shook his head and said, I don't know either. I have been on the sea god's island for so many years, but I have never seen such a trial. Everyone looked at the seahorse Douluo speechlessly. The titled Douluo of the sea god's island, one of the 7 holy pillars, didn't know? Tang San was also a little perplexed. He had only sensed a burst of special power emanating from the vast sea cosmic shroud, making him feel as if his entire body had been bathed in a gentle energy. After the golden light entered his glabella, he seemed to have understood something. Although I don't know, this test is definitely beyond the top 7 tests. The seahorse Douluo couldn't help but shake his head. How strange! He could somewhat understand Xiao Wu's top-tier test, but he knew nothing about the golden light test. At this time, a gentle voice with a bit of majesty sounded. That's the 9 trials of the sea god. Wang Feng turned his head and saw a beautiful woman in her 30s. She wore a red robe and held a golden scepter. Even the gemstone inlaid on top of the scepter was pure gold. The figure walked over leisurely from the distant horizon. It seemed to be very far away, but in the blink of an eye, it was already right in front of Zhang Xian. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this woman was the head consecrator of the sea god's island, Possessi. Although she looked like she was in her 30s, Possessi was probably more than 100 years old. She was someone who was on the same level as his great-grandmother. When the seahorse Douluo saw this woman, he hurriedly walked over and said respectfully, Head consecrator, this. Possessi shook her head. She looked as if she had seen the vicissitudes of life. She looked at Tang San and smiled. Child, this is the 9 tests of the sea god. I've waited for more than 100 years on the sea god's island, and it's finally here. Your aura is a little familiar. Possessie's smile was very gentle, like a spring breeze. Can I see your 2 martial souls? Tang San was stunned. When he passed the seahorse Douluo's test, he only used his clear sky hammer. He didn't even use his soul rings. He didn't expect this legendary rank 99 head consecrator of the sea god's island to be able to tell at a glance. However, when he thought about this head consecrator's background, Tang San wasn't too surprised. His master had once told him that even the head consecrator of the Martial Soul Hall had been defeated by Possessie. It seemed like there was a gap between them even among rank 99 exceptional Douluo. Wang Feng was trying to estimate the aura that Possessie gave off. That scepter should be a special divine weapon, right? Wang Feng glanced at Possessie. 1,000 Dao Stream's abilities shouldn't be much weaker than Possessie's. If they were in the sky, Possessie might not be able to defeat him. However, if they were on the sea god's island, 1,000 Dao Stream wouldn't be able to defeat him. However, Wang Feng could sense an extremely special aura from Possessie's body. It was similar to Bibidan's aura. It was the aura of a god. I wonder if this Possessie can defeat that demon whale. Wang Feng felt that it shouldn't be possible. At this moment, Tang San revealed his 2 martial souls. Clear sky hammer. Possessie looked at the small hammer and was stunned. Then, he sighed and said, "You're Tang Chen's descendant, right?" Tang San was shocked. He quickly nodded and said, "My great-grandfather is Tang Chen." Before leaving the sea god's island, Tang San had returned to the Clear Sky sect. He knew some of his great-grandfather's deeds. He didn't expect the head consecrator of the sea god's island to know him. Bai Saishi nodded slightly. His slightly disappointed gaze disappeared as he said slowly, "That's right. Tang San, the sea god's 9 tests are very important. You're very talented. You must pass at least 7 tests within 5 years." Although his voice was still gentle, there was a hint of authority in it. Wang Fengxin thought, could it be that Possessie also sensed that Bibidan had passed the 8th test? Did he already predict it? If that's the case, this Possessie is really strong. However, it seemed like these exceptional Douluo, who were only 1 step away from becoming gods, especially those who had participated in the sea god's test, had a special feeling. It was just like how the 1,000 streams could also sense that Bibidan had passed the 8th test. 5 years was the time limit for Bibidan's 9th test. "Senior, I'll do my best." Tang San nodded heavily. "No, not just do your best. You have to give it your all." Possessie's tone was cold. "Child, the sea god's 9 tests are related to the survival of the sea god's island. At the same time, it's also related to your own life. Just trying your best is not enough. I'll talk about this for now. I'll explain it to you in detail in the future. But remember one thing. You must not forget. You must pass. Even if you have to risk your life, you must pass." His voice carried a hint of Poseidon's rank 99 exceptional Douluo aura. It made everyone feel as if they were under the sea. They felt as if there was endless water pressure pressing down on them. His tone was very heavy. Tang San and the others were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Only Tang San felt something and nodded slowly. Chapter 725. Seeing this, Possessie looked at the seahorse Douluo and said, "Pass down my orders. No one on the sea god's island is allowed to offend these 9 people. Apart from not helping them complete the test, we must try our best to fulfill their conditions." The seahorse Douluo quickly nodded. "Come to the sea god's palace tomorrow. I will hold a sea god's conference. We will discuss the details then." After giving his instructions, Possessie was about to leave when he suddenly looked at Wang Feng and the others. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. One had to know that he had also experienced the true God's test. He wondered if Possessie could sense it. It shouldn't be possible. After all, there was only one test. He wasn't the heir to the Rakshasa deity's throne. From Possessi's words, it was obvious that he had sensed some danger. Even if he didn't know that Bibidan would come 3 years later, he had a strong sense of danger. That was why he spoke so seriously to Tang San. However, Wang Fengxian was still a little worried when he sensed that Possessi was sizing him up, Hulaina, and the others. It didn't matter if he was discovered. He could escape at any time. However, it was hard to say if Hulaina and the others were discovered. Fortunately, Possessi only glanced at Wang Feng. He didn't say anything else. Or rather, Tang San's appearance had given him the greatest surprise. "The 4 of you, come to the holy pillar quickly for the test." At this moment, the seahorse Douluo hurriedly looked at Wang Feng and the others. Although the seahorse Douluo had never heard of the 9 tests of the sea god, he knew that it wasn't simple. Naturally, he wanted the remaining 4 to finish the test quickly. Then, he would return to Seahorse City to prepare. After Possessi appeared, Hulaina and the others carefully concealed their auras. They remained silent. Possessi gave them a feeling that he was even scarier than the martial spirit hall's great consecrator. "Let me go first." Evil Moon walked up. Under the seahorse Douluo's blue light, the holy pillar shone brightly. Eventually, it formed a black light. Evil Moon's talent was slightly inferior to Shenlingqi's. Third black test. The gap between him and the 7 monsters was obvious. Next, Yan walked up. Yan's talent and aptitude were better than Evil Moon's. His strength lay in his martial spirit. He was on par with Shenlingqi in the 4th black grade examination. Finally, it was Hulaina. Hulaina was the most talented of the 3. She was a 6th grade black student and was only slightly weaker than the 7 monsters. It was mainly because of the star that his martial soul had undergone a deep mutation. Furthermore, he had stayed in the massacre city. "These 3 don't seem too bad," the seahorse Douluo muttered to himself. They were all black ranks, and the worst of them were only slightly weaker than him. Wang Feng stood there quietly. "Why is this Possessi still here?" Wang Fengxian secretly said. He was a little worried that there would be a problem during the Saint Pillar examination. Teacher Yu Hulaina looked at Wang Feng, her eyes filled with admiration and confidence. She was full of expectations for Wang Feng. It was not just the 3 of them. Even Tang San and the other 8 looked at Wang Feng with different expressions. This white-clothed popediff from the martial spirit palace had disguised himself and entered the sea god's island. It was definitely not that simple. Tang San even wanted to tell Possessi who he was so that he could capture him. However, considering that the situation was a little complicated and Tang San did not know what was going on, he did not do so. This white-clothed popediff brought too much pressure. When he attacked the wolf bandits, even Senior Chen Xian was no match for him. If he had not broken through at the last minute, he did not know what would have happened. "Don't you want to give it a try?" At this moment Possessi, who had not left yet, said faintly. His tone was not as gentle as the sea, and he did not have the majestic coldness of a great consecrator. He was very calm. Wang Feng walked up and looked at the Saint Pillar in silence. The seahorse Douluo's eyes flashed, and a blue light fell on Wang Feng. In the next moment, rays of light flashed from the bottom of the Saint Pillar almost instantly, as if it had been activated in an instant. Countless patterns on the Saint Pillar flickered, and violent energy spread out from the Saint Pillar. Waves of air blew the surrounding lake water and the forest in the distance. Blue, white, yellow, purple, black, and red lights lit up instantly, and the light pillar shot into the sky. In the end, it also formed a golden light pillar. This golden light pillar was extremely dazzling. It was even more dazzling than Tang San's. Everyone's eyes widened. Even Possessi's calm eyes were a little shocked at this moment. He did not expect this to happen. There could not be 2 of the 9 trials of the sea god. This represented the inheritance of the sea god. How could there be 2 of them? At this moment, Possessie's expression was similar to that of the ghost Douluo in the heavenly Rakshasa secret realm. Confusion, shock, doubt. All kinds of expressions flashed across Possessie's mind. If Possessie was like this, then everyone else was like this. The seahorse Douluo was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Crack, crack, the seahorse Douluo felt a crisp crack coming from Possessie. He looked to the side and was stunned. He saw that the saint pillar, which was covered with countless ancient patterns, was cracking along with those patterns. The seahorse Douluo stared at the saint pillar in a daze. A red shadow flickered, and Possessie immediately appeared in front of the saint pillar. He looked at the saint pillar with a burning gaze, and the golden scepter in his hand shone with a peerless light. At the same time, a ball of blue light appeared in his hand, and he pressed it against the saint pillar. This caused the cracks on the saint pillar to slowly heal. Even Possessie was not sure what was going on. However, what happened next made Poseidon, who was already unclear about the situation, even more confused. The dazzling golden light pillar quickly weakened, and it was weakening layer by layer. By the time it landed on Wang Feng's body, it was already very faint. In the end, it imprinted itself between Wang Feng's brows and formed a dim trident. Only then did the commotion slowly die down. For a moment there was an incomparable silence in the sea. As the commotion died down, the surrounding water also calmed down. Head consecrator, the seahorse Douluo was completely stunned. Is this also one of the 9 trials of the sea god? Possessie did not reply. She was not sure what was going on either. Possessie had been on the sea god's island for so many years, and she had always followed the will of the sea god. She was not even sure if this was one of the 9 trials of the sea god. The dazzling golden light had completely surpassed the corresponding light of the 9 trials of the sea god. It even seemed to be evolving. This meant that this person had not only received the approval of the sea god, but the sea god also believed that this person could reach a higher level. At least that was what Possessie understood. Possessie was not sure about the specifics. She did not understand the world of the gods. However, if that was the case, why did the golden light at the end weaken? What did weakening mean? Did it mean that the sea god was disappointed in him? Or did she discover something? But how could the sea god make a mistake? For a moment, Possessie's mind was in a mess. She felt that she had to contact the sea god personally to understand what was going on. Actually, Possessie had already sensed the powerful aura from the other party. She knew that the other party was not simple. However, she did not expect the situation to be like this. If even she, as the head consecrator of the sea god's island, was in such a state, there was no need to talk about the others. At this moment, perhaps only Wang Feng knew what was going on. P.S. My eyes are a little sore today. I don't think so. Rest for a while, I'll fight again tomorrow. Chapter 726. When the golden pillar of light rose, Wang Feng felt that it was very strange. Because this was even more exaggerated than in front of the Rakshasa statue. Back then, the Rakshasa deity gave him the 9 tests of true gods. But now, this one even surpassed the 9 tests of sea god, which made Wang Feng feel incredulous. Could it be that the sea god thinks so highly of me? One must know that the sea god was not personally present in this kind of test, so it was impossible for him to perceive many of his secrets. The sea god shouldn't have descended to the mortal world, right? Could it be that he has seen me? Impossible. Wang Fengxin said. Could it be that he was shocked after sensing my handsome appearance? In any case, when the golden light rose into the sky, Wang Feng was very puzzled. Then, Wang Feng felt that the golden light was forming some kind of connection with him, and flew into his mind. But it was also at that time that Wang Feng felt the dark angel martial spirit in his body go berserk again, as if it was rejecting this power, and at the same time, absorbing this power. This really surprised Wang Feng. All along, although this dark angel martial spirit was called a martial spirit, Wang Feng felt that this thing was slightly different from a martial spirit. It was more like a different kind of martial spirit. From the power of the blood marks cultivated, it could be seen that this was not something that an ordinary martial spirit could do. The chaotic green lotus and Pangu axe were martial spirits that surpassed the Douluo world. Naturally, they were different. But this dark angel martial spirit was very likely to be a martial spirit that surpassed the Douluo world. It was more like a high-level form of energy and not just a martial soul. When the system gave it to him, Wang Feng remembered very clearly that this was just a mysterious humanoid martial spirit. The dark angel martial spirit was just a name he gave it. Could this martial spirit be the same as the Qian Rinxue's six-winged angel, a symbol of some kind of divine position? The Qian Rinxue's six-winged angel martial spirit was a symbol of the angel god itself, because only in this way could Wang Feng understand why the dark angel martial spirit could not only absorb the power of the Rakshasa deity, but also the power of the sea god. This meant that the dark angel martial soul was most likely some kind of divine position inheritance. As the dark angel martial soul absorbed the power of the 9 trials of the sea god, there was an additional trace of blue light in the blood patterns. Wang Feng vaguely sensed that the original sin's domain had also changed. The 7 pairs of pitch-black wings of the angel martial soul in his sea of consciousness had turned from black to blackish gold. This was also the reason why the golden light became weaker and weaker as it fell. Because it was the same as the 9 tests of true gods given by the Rakshasa deity, most of its power had been absorbed. However, there was something that Wang Feng did not understand. He had only absorbed a portion of such a massive amount of golden light. Most of it had automatically dissipated. It was quite strange. This dark angel martial soul possesses the blood traces formed by cultivating 7 types of origin energy. It can even absorb the divine power that descended. Although it might be weaker than the primal chaos green lotus and the Pangu axe, it might be the key to a deity position. However, there is no deity position inheritance related to this dark angel martial soul in the Douluo world. Could it be that the deity position has shattered and fallen? Wang Feng did not know much about the deity position in the Douluo world, so he could only make wild guesses. At this moment, when the light passed through Wang Feng's mask and formed a trident between his eyebrows, Wang Feng slowly regained his senses. Everyone's gaze landed on Wang Feng, fixated on him. "Sir, can you take off your mask?" Possessi withdrew his hand from the holy pillar and looked at the holy pillar that was still intact. His eyes flickered with a strange light. The holy pillar was connected to the sea god. The shattering of the holy pillar meant that the sea god's test could not be withstood by a single holy pillar. In other words, no matter what, the situation just now had surpassed the 9 trials of the sea god. Possessi had never experienced such a situation and could not explain it. He could only confirm it by understanding the other party. But no matter what, it was indeed the 9 trials of the sea god. It was just that the light at the end suddenly became extremely weak. This was what puzzled Possessi the most. Perhaps only the sea god descends would know the answer to that. Wang Feng did not hesitate and took off his mask. Tang San and the others had seen his face before. Hulaina and the other 2 had also seen his face before. He wore this mask because he was used to it. He did not want to cause a commotion. The moment the mask was taken off, the trident on Wang Feng's forehead appeared in front of Possessi's eyes. It was not as bright and golden as Tang San's, and the imprint was very deep. Instead, it was very faint and indistinct. "Tsk, isn't this person too handsome?" The seahorse Douluo could not help but exclaim. He immediately shut his mouth after he finished speaking. In terms of appearance, Tang San could be said to be superior to everyone else. However, this mysterious black-clothed man's appearance seemed to transcend everything. He seemed to be one with nature. At first glance, one would be amazed that such a man existed in the world. At second glance, one would be deeply attracted. At third glance, one would be unable to extricate oneself. The more the seahorse Douluo looked at him, the more he felt like he understood something. When Possessi first saw Wang Feng, he vaguely understood how he could cause such a huge commotion. When the mask was taken off, Wang Feng's appearance and aura merged into one. He exuded a pure and natural aura. This aura was comparable to the vastness of the sea and the vastness of the sky. It seemed to be able to contain and purify everything. This child's body is probably blessed by the heavens. Possessi muttered in his heart, the sea god must have seen this as well. That's why he sent down such a mysterious test. This test is beyond the 9 tests of the sea god, however, in reality, they were all wrong. It was because the sea god had seen Wang Feng that he sent down such a test that surpassed the 9 tests of the sea god. However, it was a pity that Wang Feng did not know this. No one else knew either. As for why it disappeared, that was another unknown secret. After thinking for a long time, Possessi looked at Wang Feng. His tone was as gentle and calm as before. Wang Wu, can you tell me your background? Wang Feng pondered for a moment before saying, my name is Nicholas Wang Wu. I come from the northernmost part of the Soul Beast Forest. These 3 are my disciples. I brought them to Sea God's Island for cultivation. Logically speaking, apart from his name, everything Wang Feng said was true. However, after Tang San and the others heard this, they felt that it was a lie. Nicholas Wang Wu was not a famous name. If you asked the white-clothed Popediff on the continent, everyone would know who he was. However, not many people knew the name Nicholas Wang Wu. Only Tang San knew this name. This was because Tang San already knew this name when he was in the city of Massacre. Possessi stared at Wang Feng and revealed a faint smile. I see. According to the light, your test should be the first or second test of the sea god. Normally, the sea god's test would only appear on one person. However, there are 2 people today. One is the first test, while the other is the first test. This is not impossible. Chapter 7:27. As the great consecrator, she couldn't tell him that she didn't know anything. That would damage her dignity as the great consecrator of the Sea God's Island. However, Possessi's guess wasn't wrong. Wang Feng was indeed taking the Sea God's second trial. Just like the True God's 9th trial, Wang Feng's Sea God's trial had been reduced to 2 trials. There were really 2 trials, and it wasn't something that Wang Feng had made up. Wang Feng nodded in agreement. Possessi pondered for a moment. Wang Feng wasn't the Sea God's successor, but he had taken the Sea God's trial. He was also an important figure to the Sea God's Island. These 4 people are also the Sea God's Island's distinguished guests. Possessi said to the seahorse Douluo, let them stay in your seahorse city. Try to satisfy their conditions, but don't help them pass the trial. After giving his instructions, Possessi looked at Wang Feng and continued, although the Sea God's trial doesn't have 2 trials, it's still very dangerous. I hope you can do your best to pass the trial. It will help and improve yourself. The last sentence was for Wang Feng and Tang San's group of 7. Other than being meaningful, the trial was also very helpful to them. After speaking, Possessi turned into a streak of red light and disappeared from everyone's sight. The trial in front of the holy pillar finally came to an end. However, it gave Wang Feng a lot of thoughts about the godly position. Wang Feng didn't really care about the godly position in the Douluo world. However, it was still a path that couldn't be avoided. You could either walk over it or jump over it. Of course, you could also fly over it. However, you had to see this path. You had to know what it looked like. However, Wang Feng knew that if he wanted to step on this path directly, it would be far more difficult than Little 3 and Qianrenxue. It was too difficult. Wang Feng didn't know how big the gap between each rank was after he reached rank 90. How much time would it take? If he continued to compress and purify his soul power, it would be an astronomical number to reach rank 90. Now that Wang Feng was at level 68, he had a deep understanding of this multiplied effect. When that time came, if he could really fight a god before reaching rank 90, would the rules of this world forbid him? Or perhaps it would provoke those experts from the god realm to covet it. What should he do then? Wang Feng's thoughts suddenly flew very far away. The world of Douluo was still very exciting, and the future was limitless. There was no point in thinking too much. The most important thing now was how to get through the crisis 3 years later. 3 years. If he wanted Tang San and the others to pass the test and leave the Sea God's Island. It was too difficult. Everyone, please come with me. The seahorse Douluo looked at everyone, and his tone was completely different from before. There was a smile on his face as he said, "Follow me to Seahorse City first. I'll arrange accommodations for all of you, and you can rest for a few days. I'll also send someone to answer your questions regarding the test." Everyone nodded. "This white Popediff Wang Wu isn't that great either," Ma Hongjun muttered softly. "Third brother. He's only taken the Sea God exam twice. He's far from you. Although this is the second time I've seen this guy, he's really handsome. Look at those people from the Sea God's Island." Even the seahorse Douluo was stunned. The envy and jealousy in Ma Hongjuan's voice made Dai Mubai and the others nod their heads. Indeed, he's too damn handsome. What's the use of being handsome? At this moment, Bai Qinxiang suddenly opened her mouth to comfort him. Actually, for a girl, being handsome is more of an appreciation. The more handsome and capable a man is, the more girls will only admire him. They won't even really want to be with him. Because this kind of man will make a lot of girls feel inferior. They will feel that they don't deserve him. They won't dare to like him. Look, no matter how handsome he is, has he ever been with a girl? Not at all. His identity and status are so extraordinary, but he doesn't even have a woman by his side. What does this mean? This means that he's not as good as you. Ma Hongjun was stunned when he heard Bai Qinxiang's words. Then, he hugged Bai Qinxiang's shoulders and said emotionally, "Qinxiang, I didn't expect you to say something like this. So, you admit that you're my wife, my woman?" Bai Qinxiang blushed and pushed Ma Hongjun away. She said, "Who said that? You didn't even propose to me. I was just comforting you." Tang San and the others looked at the two of them and couldn't help but smile. Actually, what Chen Xiang said is quite reasonable. Oscar pondered and said, "A person who is too outstanding will make others flinch. If you really have to choose." At this point, Oscar thought for a moment and said with a deep expression, "I'm willing to be an outstanding person." Everyone. You mean you want to be such an outstanding person and then flirt with many girls? Xin Lingqi looked at Oscar from the side with a half-smile. Oscar quivered and hurriedly waved his hand. "How can that be? The main thing is that you're too outstanding, Lingqi. I'm only doing this to be worthy of you. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to be such a person." Xin Lingqi giggled. "Who wants you to be worthy of me? I'm the one who has to work hard to be worthy of you." Tang San looked at Oscar's witty reply and thought, Oscar has never been in a relationship before. How can he say something like that? I'm also quite smart. Why can't I say something like that? Tang San held Xiao Wu's hand and suddenly thought, maybe this is the love between me and Xiao Wu? There were no fancy honeyed words, only the warmth of helping each other in times of need. "I don't agree." Ning Rongrong raised her hand and said, "People who love each other won't be restrained by the abilities of both parties. If one person sincerely likes the other person, then they will do everything they can to be worthy of the other person. They won't flinch. At least, I won't." Bai Qinxiang nodded and said, "Rongrong, you're right. But what if you can only see the other person's back, no matter how hard you chase after him?" Everyone was stunned. They thought, isn't she talking about Brother Feng? Then I can't give up, Ning Rongrong said. If love is given up so easily, then it's not called love. Even if I can't see the other person's back, I will still chase after him until I can't run anymore. Hearing that, Bai Qinxiang looked at Ning Rongrong. Seeing the determination in her eyes, her heart was touched. Only Zhu Zhuqing vaguely remembered what he said to her in the Pope's palace when she was lying in his arms. If one day he left this world, the world would be in chaos. Or rather, he was no longer in this world. Thinking of this, Zhu Zhuqing didn't dare to think too deeply. I support Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing said softly. Tang San smiled and said, You're overstating it. In fact, if the gap between two people's love is too big, even if the person in front can't stop and wait for his lover, he will still help the lover behind him and move forward together. At least, that's what I do. Brother Feng has been doing the same. Tang San's final words directly pointed it out, making Ning Rongrong's face involuntarily redden. Zhu Zhuqing's face also flushed red. Wang Feng didn't know what they were talking about. If he knew, he would definitely agree with Bai Qinxiang. I'm sorry, but it's impossible for me to catch up with your progress. Chapter 728. Stop? I can't stop at all. However, Wang Feng had tried his best to help them keep up with him. Wang Feng was currently asking the seahorse Douluo about the situation on Sea God's Island. Sea God's Island has a total of 7 cities. Each city isn't big, but there are more than 1,000 people living there. They are managed by the 7 Holy Pillar Dalu. Each city has about 500 sea soul masters guarding it. Most of them are old people and children. The seahorse Douluo told everyone about Sea God's Island. Wang Feng was stunned. Sea God's Island is powerful enough? There are at least 3,500 sea soul masters here. There are close to 4,000 sea soul masters here. This is even more powerful than the 7 treasure glazed tile sect. On Sea God's Island, they wouldn't be afraid even if they faced 10,000 soul masters. Bibidon can't do much even if he comes knocking on our door, right? Wang Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Sea God's Island is so powerful. Bibidon can't come from so far away. Even if he came, he can't do anything to Sea God's Island. Unless he becomes a god. However, it's impossible for Bibidon to become a god in 3 years. Wang Feng was quite happy after learning about Sea God's Island's strength. Sea God's Island is very powerful. Even the strongest sects on the continent outside don't have so many soul masters. Hulaina spoke the truth. However, the soul masters on Sea God's Island usually don't leave, right? However, when we came here, we saw a building that looked like a port in another direction. The seahorse Douluo smiled and said, Of course the soul masters on Sea God's Island won't leave. However, the soul masters from the outside will come in and form a hub with us. For example, the soul masters who brought you to Sea God's Island were soul masters who didn't pass the Holy Pillars test. Although they were once residents of Sea God's Island, they were expelled because they didn't pass the test. This group of soul masters is the foundation of our connection to the outside world. You saw it just now. There are many different tests on Sea God's Island. It also represents the strength of our soul masters. They are divided into blue, white, yellow, purple, and black. They nodded. The test's difficulty was directly related to one's aptitude. Seahorse City is just up ahead. It's not that big. I have already arranged rooms for you in advance. When the time comes, I will send someone to bring you to rest. In 2 days, I will send someone to look for you to talk about the examination. It'll also allow you to familiarize yourselves with the Sea God's Island. The content of the test is in that mark. Use your spiritual power to sense it and you will be able to see the content clearly. After you complete it, the content of the next test will be displayed. The seahorse Douluo pointed at the city in front of him. Although it was called a city, in Wang Feng's eyes, It was no different from a small town. According to the seahorse, Douluo, Seahorse City, was the smallest of the 7 cities. However, the largest city, Sea Dragon City, only had about 2,000 people living there. It was just a slightly bigger town. However, the houses in the city were rather fantastical. They were of different shapes and sizes, as if they were built according to the forms of various sea spirit beasts. After the seahorse Douluo left, the yellow-robed soul master who had discovered Wang Feng and the others brought them to a house that was shaped like a large seahorse. They walked into the house through the seahorse's mouth. There were all kinds of daily necessities inside, and there were even several rooms. If you want food, we can provide it for free. Sea God's Island doesn't lack food. However, if you want other things from the Sea God's Island, you will have to exchange for them yourself. We don't use the currency of the outside world here. You can also take a look around. The yellow-robed soul master said a few more basic things before he left. The 9 tests of the sea god. After the yellow-clothed soul master left, Evil Moon and the other 2 raised a faint soul power light shield, enveloping Wang Fengyi and the other 2. Sea god, listening to the meaning of this name, it should mean the god's inheritance that His Majesty the Pope mentioned, right? Will we become the true sea god if we pass the 9 tests of the sea god? It wasn't hard to guess. It was easy to guess from the name. If that's the case, then we can stop Tang San from taking the test. However, I'm afraid that's not very realistic. After all, the great consecrator of the Sea God's Island is so close to Tang San. He even gave the order personally. You can imagine how difficult it will be to stop him. Evil Moon shook his head. Fortunately, their mission was only to pass the test of the Sea God's Island and improve their strength. They already understood the situation on the Sea God's Island. Stopping Tang San and the others from taking the test was Lord Popetiff's mission. Luckily, from today's situation, the head consecrator was evidently quite close to the Pope. After all, it was still the Sea God's test. Think about the content of the test for the next 2 days. Then, take a look at the city and the Sea God's Island. Wang Feng looked at the 3 of them and said, I will temporarily stop your training. The content of the test is what you will face now. You don't have to think about anything else. The 3 of them nodded. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Wang Feng had also adapted to life on the Sea God's Island. He had to admit that the energy here was abundant and very suitable for cultivation. The energy below the holy pillar was even denser. It was no wonder that the seahorse Douluo had been cultivating under the holy pillar. Other than that, the people on the Sea God's Island were more friendly and friendly. It could be considered a paradise. However, the Sea God's Island was indeed powerful. As far as Wang Feng knew, the Moro tribe only had slightly more than 1,000 soul masters who could fight. The Sea God's Island was 3 times the size of the Moro tribe. On the 3rd day, the seahorse Douluo sent 2 purple-robed soul masters to answer the questions of the 2 groups of people. These 2 purple-robed soul masters had a type of martial soul called swordfish. Their attacks were very strong. At the same time, they were also soul sages. Purple-robed soul masters were second only to black-robed soul masters. In the central plaza of the Seahorse City, a purple-robed soul master asked Wang Feng and the others, Everyone, the seahorse Douluo has asked me to explain the content of the test to you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me first. Now tell me the content of the first test. On the other side, Tang San and the others were also in the plaza. Passing through the light of the sea god and reaching the 140th step, the person who spoke was Dai Mubai. When the 2 purple-robed soul masters heard this, they were stunned. They broke out in cold sweat. The first test is to pass through the light of the sea god. And it's so high. No wonder it's a black test. Don't tell me the rest of you did the same? Tang San and the others nodded their heads. Their first test was to pass through the light of the sea god. They all used the light of the sea god and reached the 140th step. Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing's tests were higher. They had an extra 20 step. Bai Qinxiang's test was halved, but there was an additional condition. Shun Lingqi's test was around the 100th step. Tang San's test was twice as high, but he had to reach the 350th step. After hearing these numbers, the two purple-robed soul masters were stunned. They were very shocked. Then, they looked at Wang Feng and the others. In comparison, Yan, Xieyu, and Hu Laiina's first test was not to pass through the light of the sea god. Instead, they had to bear the sea god's lock and sink 700 meters to 1,000 meters. When they heard the content of the test, the two purple-robed soul masters' mouths twitched. The two purple-robed soul masters looked at Wang Feng, who had a trident between his eyebrows, and asked, "What's the content of your test?" Wang Feng fell silent. P.S. I wrote 3 chapters. Vote for me. Chapter 729. The Sea God's Lock was made up of dozens of chains in the center of the Sea God's Island. Each of them weighed at least a few thousand kilograms, and they were extremely tough. In the past, they were used to trap some of the violent sea spirit beasts that attacked the Sea God's Island. After trapping them in the sea, they would be educated and turned into gentle sea spirit beasts. Most of the Sea God's locks were idle now. Only a few of them were still used to trap some stubborn sea spirit beasts. Some of them could not be tamed and could only be left to become the soul rings of the sea spirit masters. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to bear the Sea God's lock and sink hundreds of thousands of meters into the center of the sea. It was not inferior to crossing the Sea God's light and ascending the steps. The two purple-robed soul masters looked at Wang Feng, who had a faint trident mark between his eyebrows, and thought, "Is he going to take the same test?" Hu Laiina and the other two also looked at Wang Feng. They had heard about the Sea God's Lock in the past few days. However, they did not find it difficult. They were curious about what Master Poptif's test would be like. The Sea God's test. Wang Feng was silent for a moment and answered, "Crossing the Sea God's light and entering the Sea God's temple." The two purple-robed soul masters were stunned. Not the Sea God's Lock? However, they were dumbfounded when they heard that they had to ascend the Sea God's temple. Crossing the Sea God's light and entering the Sea God's temple? The two purple-robed soul masters could not help but take a deep breath. Is this just the first test? Is this test very difficult? Hu Laiina could not help but ask. At this time, Tang San and the others had heard the news as well. The two groups were not far from each other. Sea God's Temple? Ma Hongjun muttered, "What is that place?" He looked at Tang San. The group had rested for the past 2 days because the journey was too difficult. They were tense all the time. However, they were also listening to the situation of the Sea God's Island and their first test. "Sea God's Temple," Tang San said solemnly. "It means that we have to cross the Sea God's light and ascend to the top of the steps. I'm not sure how many steps there are. However, I'm sure it's a lot. I heard that only sea spirit masters who pass the test can ascend the mountain and enter the Sea God's temple. Otherwise, it will be blocked by the light of the Sea God." This was the information that Tang San had gathered during his 2 days of rest. Because there were too few people who could go to that place, there weren't many people in the city who knew the details. Then wouldn't his test be many times harder than ours? Ma Hongjun chuckled. But this Poptif King Fifth is very strong. It's normal for him to be stronger than us. I hope he fails the first test. Tang San shook his head. Only the two purple-clothed sea soul masters knew how many steps there were in the Sea God Mountain. Judging from the other party's expression, there must be a lot of them. It was indeed a lot, and not just a little bit. The two purple-robed soul masters knew that there were 1,001 steps on the Sea God's mountain. Under the obstruction of the light of the Sea God, the first test was already so difficult that the two purple-robed soul masters didn't dare to imagine. "It's not a matter of whether it's difficult or not," the purple-robed soul master sighed. "It's an impossible problem. There are a total of 1,001 steps on the Sea God Mountain. It's not easy for us without the obstruction of the light of the Sea God. We need to be 120% alert. With the obstruction of the light of the Sea God, we can't even go up to 300 steps. Hulaina and the others were shocked when they heard this. These two were soul sages. They couldn't even go up to 300 steps? Poptif's first test was 1,001 steps? This, while they were still in shock, Wang Feng slowly said, "This is only a part of the first test, everyone." The two purple-robed soul masters were stunned. A part? You're dividing the first test into upper, middle, and lower? It's too strange. The second test is to withstand 3 sea godlocks and sink 5,500 meters. When Wang Feng said this, the two purple-robed soul masters swallowed a mouthful of water. 3 sea godlocks would weigh at least tens of thousands of kilograms. 5,500 meters was the depth of the central sea region of the Sea God's Island. Compared to the entire ocean, which was tens of thousands of meters deep, this 5,500 meters was nothing at all. However, the central sea region of the Sea God's Island was different. Above the central sea region was the Sea God's Mountain. The Sea God's Mountain suppressed the central sea region. There were many aquatic spirit beasts trapped in the central sea region. Other than being trapped by the sea godlocks, they also had to withstand the peerless pressure of the Sea God's Mountain. Otherwise, the Sea God's locks wouldn't be able to trap those powerful aquatic spirit beasts. This was the most difficult part of the test. 1,000 meters, which was Hulaina's 6th black rank test, was already very difficult. It wasn't inferior to passing through the light of the Sea God and ascending more than 100 steps. Sinking into the central sea region, one would have to withstand the weight of the Sea God's locks, the pressure of the sea, and the pressure of the Sea God's Mountain. They would have to face the situation where they couldn't breathe in the sea and would have to consume a lot of soul power. These kinds of pressure would bring a lot of obstruction to the soul masters. Their lives were also in danger. The deeper they sank, the greater the danger. For soul sages like them, they would be able to sink deeper after being possessed by their martial souls because of their swordfish martial souls. From this point of view, it was more advantageous for a sea soul master to pass this test than to pass through the light of the Sea God. But for a land soul master, it would be even more difficult. Not to mention 5,500 meters and 3 sea gods lock. If it was them, your first test is really an impossible task. The two purple-robed soul masters showed some pity in their eyes. It was the first time they heard of the Sea God's test. Although there were only 2 tests, it was much more difficult than Tang San, who had the 9 tests of the Sea God. On the other side, Tang San and the others naturally heard it clearly. Will the Sea God know that these people from the Martial Spirit Palace have ulterior motives and deliberately make things difficult for him? The group of people looked at each other. After listening to the content of the other party's test, they suddenly felt that their test was very simple. How is this making things difficult for him? They want him to die. Oscar said with a smile. Compared to the surface, it's easier for a sea soul master to pass in the sea. But for us land soul masters, it's more difficult. Although I don't know the details, it's obvious that the other party's test. Oscar chuckled. Serves him right. Ning Rongrong stared at the white-clothed Poptif. She thought that she had mistaken this bastard as Wang Feng and said so many intimate words of love to him. She couldn't help but want to cut him into pieces. But this guy should know Wang Feng very well. At that time, he acted as if it was real. Zhu Qing, don't you feel relieved after hearing it? Ning Rongrong looked at Zhu Qing, who was silent beside her, and patted her chest comfortably. Zhu Qing was silent for a few seconds before she nodded and said, "Well, serves him right," just when they were still sighing with relief. At this time, they heard Wang Feng speak again. There's still the last part. Chapter 730. As soon as he said that, The two purple-clothed soul masters were stunned on the spot. There's more? Is this really just the first exam? The two purple-clothed soul masters said with dry mouths, and their minds were buzzing. Wang Feng was also a little depressed. That golden light had clearly dissipated by more than half, and Wang Feng only felt that there were 2 exams. Because the content of the next exam would only be revealed after passing each exam. But when Wang Feng used his spirit to sense the weak mark between his eyebrows, he found that the first exam was really divided into 3 parts. There was only one reward. This was abnormal. Very abnormal. He clearly only had 2 exams, but it was divided into several parts. What was the difference between this and the 9 exams? Wang Feng was very suspicious that the sea god deliberately tampered with the content of the exam. It was very likely that the sea god felt that the power he sent down was inexplicably reduced. After only 2 exams, he felt that it might not be enough and was not satisfied. He had forcefully added other content into his 2 tests. Wang Feng was a little speechless. This was like having a wish, and this wish was to have 3 more wishes. Too shameless. Too much. There was only one reward, but the content of the exam was so much. This was simply cheating. The sea god must be deliberately making things difficult for me. The last part Wang Feng thought for a while and continued. Tame 3 80,000-year-old sea spirit beasts in the Central Sea, cut off the sea god's lock, and bring them out of the Central Sea, the 2 purple-clothed soul masters. This doesn't seem to be very difficult. Hulaina said, Teacher, with your strength, it shouldn't be difficult to tame 80,000-year-old soul beasts, right? Poptive strength could even tame 100,000-year-old soul beasts and bring them back from the great star dough forest. With teacher's strength, wouldn't it be easy for him to tame 80,000-year-old soul beasts? The sea region under the sea god mountain is filled with extremely ferocious soul beasts since ancient times. However, the 2 purple-clothed sea spirit masters' voices were trembling. Most of them live thousands of meters below the surface of the sea. After so many years, most of the sea spirit beasts below have either been tamed or killed by us powerful sea spirit masters to become soul rings. The remaining ones are extremely powerful. Even we, the sea spirit masters, can't kill them or tame them. We can only use the sea god's mountain and the sea god's lock to suppress them. It can be said that every single one of the sea spirit beasts that are chained down are extremely powerful. Even the head consecrator can't tame them. But it takes a lot of effort to kill them. The losses outweigh the gains. Unless the great consecrator personally takes action, even the 7 saints would find it difficult to kill him in the sea. The 2 purple-clothed cultivators trembled as they spoke. To put it bluntly, now, in the Central Sea domain beneath the sea god mountain, there were only some tough bones that were hard to chew. Those soft and weak ones had been tamed long ago. After taming them, we still have to cut off the sea god's lock. This is even more impossible. The purple-clothed sea spirit master continued. The sea god's lock is made of the most precious metal in our sea, the sky-blue heavy gold. It contains a little bit of the sea god's power and is indestructible. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to bind those ferocious sea beasts. This is even more difficult than the previous 2. No, it's actually the same. Because it's impossible to complete. Towards the end, the 2 purple-clothed sea spirit masters seemed to be subverted. Wang Feng didn't say anything. He could only feel that this test was filled with deep malice. What did the sea god want to do? Did I eat his rice? It's just a test and he gave me these things? There was only one Rakshasa god. Could it be that the sea god knew about the situation on the Rakshasa god's side, so he changed his method? Forcefully adding 3 contents to my test? Thinking about it was just thinking, but Wang Feng still had to pass. Hulaina and the other 2 also understood that these 3 parts were simply more exaggerated than the previous one. Your test locations are all in the central ring-shaped sea area. Come with us. The two purple-clothed sea spirit masters looked at the two groups of people and led them out of the city. Then, they sped towards the center of the sea god's island. There was no transportation on the sea god's island. Although the sea god's island was very big, for most of the high-level soul masters, if they hurried at full speed, they could explore it completely in 2 days at most. Therefore, they didn't need any transportation. The two soul sages were very fast, but on land, their speed was not much faster than Tang San or Hulaina. As an agility type, Zhu Zhuqing was not inferior at all. She even surpassed them by a little. Wang Feng estimated that the entire island was about 500 miles in radius. The topography in the center was gradually rising, and the sea level was gradually rising. However, the rise was relatively gentle. After passing through a forest, they arrived at the central sea area around dusk. Although it was called a sea area, it was actually not wide. It was just a large ring-shaped lake. As far as the eye could see, it was at least 5,000 meters in diameter. There was a mountain in the center. The mountain was not very tall. It was about 500 to 600 meters tall. However, the mountain was grayish-brown. From afar, it looked like a brown gemstone. Right now, under the illumination of the setting sun, it had a faint red luster. Against the surrounding seawater, it sparkled with red light and was extremely beautiful. At the highest point of the mountain, one could vaguely see a palace that looked like white jade. It was standing in the middle of this sea area. That is our sea god's mountain. The sea god's palace is on top of it. The two purple-clothed sea spirit masters looked at it with reverence. It is also the most sacred place on the sea god's island. Under the sea god's mountain, there are a total of 72 sea gods locked. Now, most of them are empty. There are fewer aquatic spirit beasts in the sea now. Most of them have been tamed and won't attack us sea spirit masters. However, if a sea spirit master who has not taken the test enters the sea area without permission, some of the aquatic spirit beasts will attack him. But you don't have to worry. You are taking the test, so you won't be attacked by these aquatic spirit beasts. A few of the most ferocious aquatic spirit beasts will only be 5,000 meters deep. They won't float to the surface. This is because the higher they go, the more pressure they will have to bear from the sea god's mountain. Therefore, if there are no special circumstances, those ferocious and untamed aquatic spirit beasts won't come up. The tamed aquatic spirit beasts don't have sea gods locked. Therefore, they won't be under much pressure from the sea god's mountain. After the two of them finished their introductions, they did not speak anymore. They just looked at the group of people quietly. They could only answer the questions of these two groups of people, but they could not help them. Tang San and the rest discussed for a while. Without any hesitation, they decided to give it a try. They could go up and down the stairs. Once they realized that something was wrong, they just had to come down immediately. "Teacher, let's begin." Hulaina looked at Wang Feng. She took out the diving suit that she had prepared from her soul tool. Chapter 731. These were all prepared in the past 2 days. Seahorse City naturally sold such items. These diving suits were made of special materials. They could only allow them to move in the sea better. However, they could not reduce the pressure of the seawater. Hulaina was wearing a light blue diving suit. There were fin-like structures on the suit. Because it was tight, it could be said that her perfect and mature figure was completely displayed. There was a hint of excitement on her fair face. This suit could guide soul power better. It was also made of a special material. Evil Moon and Yen were wearing a black diving suit and a red diving suit. Wang Feng did not wear any. He was still wearing his original suit. Wang Feng nodded slightly and said, "The sea is different. You can go down the stairs at any time. However, once your soul power is exhausted, even breathing will become a problem. Try it first. When you reach your limit, you can stop. I have another way." This was also one of the difficulties of the assessment. In the next moment, the three of them jumped down. Wang Feng also jumped up gently. When he landed in the sea, there was not much splash. The moment the four of them entered the sea, a layer of black light appeared on their bodies. This was the symbol of their black assessment. Wang Feng's body was glowing with a faint golden light. "Teacher, the sea is so beautiful." They sank less than 10 meters. The three of them only felt a slight pressure. They did not feel anything. They did not even use their soul power to resist the pressure of the sea water. The three of them were physically strong. Hulaina was like a flexible fish. She swam around because she had been trained to swim before. Evil Moon and Yen were also looking at the sea with excitement. This sea was obviously different from the sea outside. It was almost dusk. However, the three of them could see everything under the sea. What they saw was a small forest-like vegetation in the water. It was mainly coral and seaweed. There were also other strange plants. There were also some flowers that only bloomed in the sea. It was a dazzling sight. The three of them could not take it all in. However, there were not many ordinary animals. There were many aquatic soul beasts. However, most of them were not strong. They were from 100 to 1,000 years old. Although there were many powerful aquatic spirit beasts locked up in this ring-shaped central sea region, most of them had been tamed and lived in this sea region for a long time. They had many descendants and not all of them were powerful aquatic spirit beasts. There were some stronger sea spirit beasts that tried to get close to them, but they left immediately after sensing the aura that the four of them were emitting. The three of them swam toward the sea god's mountain in the center of the sea as they enjoyed the scenery below. There was also a white and chubby little dolphin beside Hulaina. It was only about 3 or 4 meters long. Its whole body was snow-white, and it had a pair of lively big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. It didn't take long for it to become close to Hulaina. From time to time, it would surround the three of them and emit a pleasant dolphin sound. However, the closer they were to the sea god's mountain, the fewer sea spirit beasts there were. When they were about 500 meters away from the sea god mountain, the little dolphin also reluctantly left the four of them, as if it knew that it couldn't get any closer. After entering the 500-meter range of the sea god mountain, the three of them felt a special pressure coming from the sea god mountain. Wang Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at the sea god mountain in front of him. Even at the bottom of the sea god mountain seemed to extend endlessly. Furthermore, the material of the sea god mountain was very special. It wasn't corroded by the seawater at all, and it still had a brown jade-like color. If one looked at it from afar, it looked more like a pillar standing in the sea. After sinking for about 50 meters, the three of their faces changed slightly. This was because they felt as if their bodies were being squeezed. A huge pressure came from the seawater and the sea god mountain. At the same time, they saw the sea god's locks. These sea god's locks extended from the sea god mountain and floated quietly at the bottom of the sea. The sizes of the chains were different. Some were the size of bamboo, some were the size of a human leg, and some were even the size of a tree. The three of them swam to the nearest chain. The chain was bluish-silver in color, and there was a line of small words at the position where it came out of the sea god mountain. The general meaning was, "This chain weighs 5,300 kilograms, and it locks a 10,000-year-old sea spirit beast, the turquoise-eyed sea jade snake. The length of the chain is 600 meters. This chain was only about a few meters long, and it wasn't thick. Obviously, the turquoise-eyed sea jade snake had been completely tamed. Therefore, this chain had been taken back. That is to say, we need to find at least one chain that is the same distance as the test?" Evil Moon pondered. "Then we have to wrap the chain around our bodies before the real test begins?" Evil Moon sank to a depth of 750 meters, Yen to 850 meters, and Hulaina to 1,000 meters. There were many chains on the mountain wall of the sea god mountain. They looked very dense, and there were many choices. The three of them quickly made their choice. There were too many chains, and it was easy to choose. Evil Moon chose a chain that was more than 700 meters long and weighed about 6,000 kilograms. Yen chose a chain that was 800 meters long and weighed more than 7,000 kilograms. Hulaina chose a chain that was more than 900 meters long and close to 1,000 meters long. It weighed more than 8,000 kilograms. Although these chains are heavy, there is resistance from the seawater. The weight that really falls on us is not much, and it's lighter than I imagined. The 3 chains were placed very close to each other, and the chains themselves were not very thick. Before they put on the chains, the 3 of them thought so. However, when they fastened the chains to their bodies, their expressions changed. They felt a huge weight coming from the chains from afar. The chains weighed thousands of kilograms, but at least 1/5 of the weight fell on their bodies, and it was not affected by the buoyancy of the seawater at all. The 3 of them sank rapidly. At this moment, the terrifying sea pressure and the weight of the chains made the 3 of them feel a huge threat. Without any hesitation, the 3 of them quickly circulated their soul power and began to stop the downward trend. After that, he no longer spoke, because every word he spoke would consume his soul power. Under the sea, they relied entirely on the circulation of their soul power to breathe, so that their bodies would not lose consciousness because they could not breathe. This chain is not simple. I'm afraid it is indeed blessed with a special power, or it would not be able to lock those sea spirit beasts. Wang Feng looked at the situation of the 3 of them and frowned slightly. Their first test was more dangerous, and it was not as difficult as crossing the light of the sea god. But it was definitely much more dangerous. After all, it was not Tang San and the others who were valued by the sea god. The 3 of them were not valued by the sea god, and the tests were very dangerous. After the 3 of them circulated their soul power, they stopped the downward trend. If they sank like this, their bodies would not be able to adapt to the sudden increase in pressure. Chapter 732. They could easily lose their lives. They could only sink slowly and give their bodies time to adapt. However, this is also a form of extreme training. I don't know how much pressure I'll have to endure for every meter I sink. Wang Feng thought to himself. These tests were too dangerous. No wonder the death rate in the black test was so high. A few hundred meters was only a matter of seconds for the 3 of them. However, a few 100,000 seconds might not be enough now. Wang Feng saw that the 3 of them had sunk a certain distance, and he planned to let them try it on their own first. After that, Wang Feng walked around the Sea God's mountain for half a day. After confirming the situation, he found 3 chains that were at least 5,000 meters long. However, these chains weighed at least 70,000 kilograms each. They were also relatively thick. Because they were so much thicker, they weighed a lot more compared to their length. However, the weight on Wang Feng's body was probably only 10 to 20,000 kilograms. Evidently, these chains had some special strength to support them. That was why their weight could be concentrated on Huo Yuhao's body. It's not that heavy, it's just that the pressure on a soul master is too strong. Wang Feng trapped the 3 chains on his body. The pressure from the seawater, the 3 chains, and the pressure from the Sea God's mountain. Under these 3 forces, Wang Feng felt as if he was carrying weight for the first time. With Wang Feng's current physique, the mysterious underworld armor weighed close to 25,000 kilograms. Wang Feng didn't feel much even if he didn't use his soul power. However, he could feel a faint pressure now. Although it was very small, Wang Feng was still a little excited. His body was indeed very strong now. His soul bones, soul rings, meteoric tear, and karmic fire were all supporting him. His body was already very strong. Wang Feng sank rapidly. The deeper he sank, the heavier the chains. The pressure from the seawater also increased. The Sea God's mountain still couldn't be seen. The Sea God's mountain was less than 1,000 meters above sea level. However, he didn't know how deep it was in the sea. Hulaina and the other 2 sank very quickly. As they sank before Wang Feng, they reached 100 meters below sea level in less than half a day. After reaching 100 meters below sea level, that kind of pressure simply came crashing down in an overwhelming manner. The pressure of the seawater was extremely terrifying. Not to mention, with the support of the sea god mountain, the pressure in the seawater was much stronger than the sea outside. In addition to the weight of the chains, the three of them were pressed down until their bodies turned red. His soul power had already been pushed to the limit. I feel like my whole body is about to split open. Evil Moon reluctantly used his soul power to transmit his voice. Hulaina and Yen were silent. Evil Moon was actually at a disadvantage, because he was a tool soul master. He couldn't use his martial soul to enhance his strength to resist these pressures. Fortunately, Evil Moon had 2 soul bones, which could also enhance the body of a soul master. But compared to Hulaina and Yen, he was still a little lacking. After entering the sea for 100 meters, Tang Wulin felt that he had to carefully control his soul power and control the chains with every meter he sank. He controlled all the power in his body. I can still hold on for a while. Yen let out a muffled groan as the flame overlord martial spirit entered his body. He felt the pressure on him lessen significantly. However, his soul power was being drained even faster. Hulaina's mutated Heavenly Fox martial soul was also attached to his body. The three of them went down together, sinking 1 meter at a time. Their bodies gradually reached their limit. Green veins appeared on the foreheads and necks of the 3 men. At a depth of 130 meters, the 3 of them stopped. Although they couldn't see the sky at this time, they knew that it was dark and more than half a day had passed. It's the limit, Evil Moon's intermittent voice came. I feel that if I move another meter forward, I'm afraid my body won't be able to hold on. Fortunately, when Popetiff came, he gave us a few thousand kilograms of weight training. Otherwise, I don't think I can hold on for 100 meters. Hulaina and Yen were silent. Indeed, the weight training that Popetiff gave them along the way had played a great role in the current assessment. But the 3 of them were almost at their limit. Hulaina should be able to go down another 20 to 30 meters because she had 3 soul bones. Yan's martial soul was much stronger, but his soul power was not enough to support it. Where's Popetiff? The 3 of them wanted to stop. However, as soon as they stopped, that omnipresent pressure continued to crush their bodies. It was unbearable. At this time, a scene that suffocated the 3 of them appeared in front of them. Above them was a figure with 3 stone chains that resembled coiling dragons on his back. At this moment, he was descending at an extremely fast speed. It was visible to the naked eye. Almost in the blink of an eye, he was descending at least a few meters. Its teacher. Hulaina's attention was completely attracted, causing her to feel the pressure all over her body, as if she didn't feel it. It only took Wang Feng a while to catch up with Hulaina and the other 2. After entering the range of 100 meters, Wang Feng finally felt a more obvious pressure on his body. After catching up with the 3 of them, Wang Feng paused for a while and said, "Can't hold on anymore?" The 3 of them nodded reluctantly. "We plan to go up for a while to reduce some of the pressure and rest for a while to recover our soul power," Hulaina said. "Although this place is very dangerous, it's also a kind of training for us. The seawater here contains extremely rich energy. If we cultivate, it should be helpful for us." Wang Feng nodded. The 3 of them seemed to have thought about it. "After we become stronger, we'll continue to descend and break through our limits," Hulaina whispered. "The assessment time is 1 year. We have 1 year to descend to the depth of the assessment. I think this is also a special help for us. We have the confidence to do so." Wang Feng glanced at Hulaina and the other 2 with a hint of appreciation. It was good enough that they could understand this. 1 year seemed to be a long time, but in fact, the further they went, especially when they were about to reach the target depth, every meter of descent was a huge test. because the pressure would increase exponentially with the depth. Therefore, the correct way to start the assessment was to let them become stronger in this environment and break through their limits little by little. It was definitely dangerous. If they were careless, they would be swallowed by the endless pressure. 1 year is too slow. Wang Feng said slowly, 5 months. You have to finish the first assessment in 5 months. There are at least 4 assessments in the months of demons. The assessment time will only be longer, not shorter. If the assessment took 1 year, it would be impossible to finish it in the next 3 years. The progress was too slow. Although the 3 of them were from the martial spirit palace, Wang Feng had other plans for them. The 3 of them were stunned when they heard this. 5 months? How could they finish it in 5 months? Chapter 733. Teacher, you want to help us? Hulaina suddenly asked, but this assessment, if there is help from others, there should be a problem, right? Wang Feng glanced at Hulaina with some astonishment. Yes, teacher. Yen said in a muffled voice, the sea god is a god. The assessment he gave must be very familiar with us. I think that since he can set different goals for different people, then in the eyes of the sea god, we have the potential to complete the assessment. It's just to see if we can exert our potential. Wang Fengxin thought that the 3 of them were not stupid to be able to think of this. This perspective was a form of reverse thinking. Indeed, the sea god was a god after all. He could give different tests based on each person's talent and aptitude. This meant that he could detect the limit of each person's potential. But was the limit of potential so easy to reach? It was obviously impossible. It was like a test paper. In theory, it was possible to get full marks, but how many people could do it? There were definitely very few people, which was why the failure rate of the black level assessment was so high. The fact that Hulaina and the other 2 could see this meant that they had thought about it. They thought that the 3 of them could stimulate their potential and pass the assessment in the end. This was correct. I didn't expect Yen to see this. Not bad. Wang Feng nodded. Yen said embarrassedly, it's all because I'm learning from teacher. I feel like I'm thinking more and more. Wang Feng looked at Yan's honest expression and nodded. This flattery was not bad. Your thinking is correct. Wang Feng affirmed, but then he changed the topic and said calmly, but a year is too long. I do want to help you. The 3 of them looked at each other. With teacher's help, we can definitely pass the assessment quickly. But this doesn't mean much to us. Hulaina said carefully, without us becoming stronger through cultivation and eventually sinking to the destination, this doesn't mean much to us. Although the assessment didn't say that we can't cheat to help, I think this shouldn't be good, right? Xiyu and Yen also looked at Wang Feng carefully. They didn't know why Sir Popediff did this. You're wrong. Wang Feng shook his head and said, I'm not helping you to pass the test quickly, and I won't take you down with me. When I say help, I mean help you to stimulate your potential even faster, even surpassing one's own potential. Of course, it was impossible for him to bring the 3 of them down to the location of the assessment. It was too simple. Wang Feng estimated that his limit should be around 4,000 meters, so it was very easy to reduce their pressure and bring them down. The simplest method was naturally to use the blue flag to disperse the seawater, which would greatly reduce the pressure on the 3 of them and allow them to quickly reach their destination. But this was cheating, and Wang Feng naturally wouldn't help them. The 3 of them looked at Wang Feng in confusion. He didn't understand what he meant. Control your soul power and continue to descend. Wang Feng didn't answer them, but said directly. The 3 of them thought about it, and Hulaina was the first to continue sinking, indicating that she trusted Wang Feng unconditionally. The same was true for Evil Moon and Yen. Soon, it was only about 10 meters away. Evil Moon's eyes began to turn white, his face flushed red, and the soul power fluctuations in his body began to weaken. The black light on his body also gradually faded away. His skin even began to crack with many bloody lines. His body had already reached its limit. If it continued to descend, Evil Moon would definitely die. His spirit was already on the verge of collapse. If it weren't for his extreme trust in Wang Feng, he wouldn't have continued to descend. Hulaina and Yen could barely hold on. At this time, their spirits were a little dizzy, but they were still awake. They looked at Evil Moon anxiously. Seeing this, Wang Feng turned his hand, and the green lotus white flag suddenly appeared. The green light instantly enveloped Evil Moon. The next moment, in the green light, Evil Moon's consciousness gradually recovered, and the bloody lines on his body began to heal. Abundant energy enveloped the three of them. The three of them trembled. Although they could still feel the pressure, they felt that their dizzy spirits were inexplicably much more awake. The fatigue on their bodies was also gradually recovering. Hulaina and Yen looked at the flag in Wang Feng's hand in shock. They had seen this flag in the Great Star Do Forest before. It could disperse the domain of 100,000-year soul beast. But it actually had such a powerful ability? The green flag's function, in addition to dispersing the domain, also had the effect of calming one's spirit. At the same time, after absorbing the five-headed star dragon, there was an additional recovery effect. Although the recovery ability was not comparable to the golden lotus, but this was the effect of an area of effect recovery. It could not relieve the pressure brought by the seawater and the chains for the three of them, but it could relax their spirits and recover their tired bodies as well as their injuries. Immediately afterward, Wang Feng withdrew the green flag and summoned the blue flag. It formed a water hole like a bubble enveloping the three of them. In an instant, the three of them felt the pressure on their bodies weaken sharply. But with the chains, it was not completely eliminated. The pressure slowly weakened with the size of the bubble. But abundant energy seeped out from the water wall of the bubble. Cultivate. Wang Feng only said 2 words. Yes, he was using the green flag to immediately recover the three of them from their extreme state. In fact, the most important thing was that the spiritual recovery was very important. Under such high-intensity pressure, the consumption of one's spirit was even greater. The three of them suppressed the excitement in their hearts and felt that their minds were a little more awake at this moment. They immediately untied the chains and meditated on the spot to cultivate. And at this time, the benefits of this training came. The moment the chains were untied, it was equivalent to all the pressure dispersing. The three of them could not help but cry out in pleasure. It was very similar to the situation when Wang Feng used the meteoric tear for the first time to train to the extreme. After such a huge consumption, the cultivation speed was greatly improved. The key was that the energy was extremely rich. Under the effect of the blue flag, the three of them quickly cultivated in the sea that was more than 100 meters deep. Wang Feng found that the bubble formed by the blue flag could not only reduce the pressure of the seawater, but also allow the energy in the seawater to seep out for the three of them to absorb. It was equivalent to a filtering and purification effect. It could increase the concentration of the energy and indirectly increase the cultivation speed of the three of them. Using this method, the speed of the first assessment would definitely be greatly improved. At the same time, the benefits they would obtain would be even greater. Because they did not need to recuperate, they could save a lot of time and maximize the limit of their training without worrying about the danger to their lives. Thus, they could surpass their own potential. It could also speed up their cultivation speed and the progress of sinking. The actual time of the assessment would be reduced by at least half, or even more. Wang Feng himself was not in a hurry. Because when he used the blue flag, it was also a kind of cultivation for him. Moreover, Wang Feng's cultivation speed would be even faster. It could also help the three of them cultivate. Therefore, after watching the three of them cultivate, Wang Feng did not stay idle. He also meditated and cultivated. Thanks to Wang Feng's meditation, the energy in the seawater rushed into Wang Feng's body. It even caused the seawater to flow. Hulayina, who was the closest to Wang Feng, could feel this terrifying cultivation speed the clearest. P.S. There are more. Chapter 734. The storm-like energy surged into Wang Feng's body from the outside. The energy seemed to have found a place to stay, and rushed in from the seawater through the bubble membrane. Hulayina felt like she was a small boat on the edge of a storm, and her cultivation seemed to be accelerated by a few times. The shock in her heart couldn't be described with words. Hulayina had never seen Popedif officially cultivate. Even when she was traveling with them, she rarely saw Popedif meditating. This was because Wang Feng didn't spend most of his time on cultivation. His physique determined that he naturally had the ability to cultivate. Meditating wouldn't be much faster, unless it was in the blessed enclave. Only then would there be obvious improvements in meditation. Wang Feng was more focused on cultivating his spiritual power, and he placed more emphasis on this. He had already researched the various abilities that he possessed. Furthermore, Wang Feng's current soul power requirement was too high. At this moment, Hulayina sensed Popedif's cultivation beside her, and was deeply shocked. Such a terrifying cultivation speed, why doesn't Popedif's soul power rank seem very high? Hulayina felt that it was a little strange. Popedif's soul power rank had always been a mystery. He seemed to only have 5 soul rings. But in reality, he might be hiding a few. Coupled with the uniqueness of his martial soul, Hulayina couldn't completely see through Wang Wu's soul power rank. But with his current cultivation speed, Hulayina knew that Lord Popedif's soul power rank definitely wasn't low. The other party's meditation cultivation could directly increase their cultivation speed. Who would believe it if they told others about it? The reason why Wang Feng's meditation cultivation speed was so fast, apart from his physique, was also because of his spiritual power. Meditation had something to do with spiritual energy. Why was it that a high-level soul master's meditation for a minute was more than a low-level soul master's meditation for an hour? Apart from his soul rings, it was also related to his spiritual power. Wang Feng's current spiritual power had reached a very terrifying level. From a small stream in the beginning, it had become a large stream after passing through the Rakshasa secret realm. It was a little like a small river flowing together. Compared to the slow progress of his soul power, his spiritual power was improving rapidly. This was closely related to the front secret word. With such a huge amount of spiritual power, meditating at this time would naturally produce such a terrifying momentum of energy gathering like a storm. Hulayina didn't think too much about it. Taking advantage of this period of time, she quickly cultivated. This cultivation lasted for half a day. Wang Feng couldn't help but sigh when he opened his eyes. His soul force hadn't increased by much, and he was still some distance away from rank 69. However, Wang Feng was only 100 meters below the surface of the sea. Once he reached his limit, he would undergo some extreme training. By then, his cultivation speed would be greatly enhanced. I feel like I've leveled up at least half a level. Yen was the first to speak. He said with a look of surprise, a few more times and I should be able to reach level 68. Hulayina also let out a sigh of relief. She was the closest to level up. She had leveled up by at least half a level. She was not far from level 69. So did Evil Moon. At this point, everyone finally understood the true meaning behind Sir Popedif's help. Feeling that their bodies were filled with power, the feeling of becoming stronger made the 3 of them want to continue with the test. Wang Feng didn't stop them. After taking back the blue flag, the 3 of them put on the chains again and continued to sink. Although they had become stronger, the 3 of them still didn't sink fast. That was because more than 100 levels was their limit. They were now breaking through their own limits, and it wasn't that easy. It was like a person could only do 100 push-ups. No matter how well you let him rest, it was incomparably difficult to do one more on top of 100. Wang Feng didn't care about them. He pulled on the 3 chains on his body and sank toward the bottom of the sea at a rapid speed. The 3 of them. This kind of momentum caused the 3 chains to slightly stir the water at the bottom of the sea, stirring up trembling waves. I wonder what teacher's limit is? Yen watched as Wang Feng gradually disappeared from his sight. He was 120% focused and slowly sank. The 3 of them couldn't answer this question. Just like that, Wang Feng sank at an extremely exaggerated speed. In just a few days, Wang Feng had reached a depth of 1,000 meters. At this time, the 3 of them were not even 200 meters. Halfway through, Wang Feng would come back twice a day to recover the 3 of them who had reached their limit. Then, he would take them to cultivate. After reaching a depth of 1,000 meters, Wang Feng gradually felt the pressure on his body. Even the 2 purple-robed soul sages might not be able to withstand the pressure below 1,000 meters for a long time. If they were trapped by 3 chains that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms, the 2 purple-robed soul sages wouldn't be able to survive for long even if they had a martial soul like the swordfish. After 1,000 meters, Wang Feng's speed gradually decreased. He could only descend 100 meters a day. It wasn't that he had reached his limit. He could only descend so far because the pressure and the chains were too heavy. In the early stages, the chains acted as a pushing force. When the 3 of them were first tied to the chains, they were directly pressed down by the weight of the chains. However, as the sea deepened, the buoyancy increased, and the chains acted as a hindrance. Simply put, they had to pull the chains down. Wang Feng estimated that the other end of the chains was at the bottom of the sea god's mountain. It was equivalent to pulling out the 5,000-meter-long chain from the bottom of the water. This was extraordinarily strenuous. Hulaina and the other 2 were only 1,000 meters long. When they reached 300 meters, they realized that the chains weren't heavy anymore. However, they had to pull the chains along, and it was even more difficult. This was the turning point of the first test. This was why Wang Feng's speed decreased after 1,000 meters. At the same time, Wang Feng and the other 3 didn't seem to be in the sea at all. They were focused on passing this test. This kind of training was actually very terrifying. If they weren't careful, even if their bodies could withstand it, their minds wouldn't be able to. They used meditation to replace cultivation every day for a fixed 6 hours. Fortunately, Wang Feng's green lotus flag could restore their minds. Every time, they would recover from their mental breakdown and enter a frenzied state of cultivation. When they were hungry, they would eat the rations stored in their soul tools. Furthermore, their bodies weren't dirty when they soaked in the sea. On the contrary, the sea water was very pure. In less than a month, the 3 of them had increased by more than 1 rank. At the same time, they had sunk to a depth of more than 350 meters. This was a huge improvement. Wang Feng had also reached 2,000 meters. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 735. The depth of 2,000 meters was truly terrifying. However, Wang Feng's speed did not suddenly decrease after reaching 1,000 meters. Instead, he maintained a constant speed. At the same time, at 2,000 meters, Wang Feng also had to channel his soul power to pull the 3 chains. Otherwise, his speed would be too slow. With pure physical strength, Wang Feng could still withstand the sea pressure, but pulling the 3 chains without a point of support was very difficult without using soul power. In fact, it could be seen from this that Wang Feng's current physical limit was very difficult to reach. At the same time, on the coast, 1 month. For Tang San and the others, it was not an ordinary month. The moment they ascended the stairs, the light of the sea god with boundless pressure attacked from all directions. In the first 20 or so steps, Shrek's 7 monsters passed them relatively easily. The steps were not high, only half a meter, and they went up in a circular shape. Bai Chenxiang and Shin Lingqi were very slow. They were much slower than Ning Rongrong and Oscar. For example, Bai Qinxiang's physical fitness was average, and she could not climb more than 10 steps. Shun Lingqi was a little better. Her soul power was much higher. At first, she could barely break through the 20th step, but she was almost at her limit. As for the rest, the strongest, Tang San, even directly ascended the 52nd step in one go. Dai Mubai reached the 40th step, Ma Hongjun reached the 34th step, Ning Rongrong only reached the 29th step, and Oscar reached the 29th step. It could be said that support-type soul masters were generally much weaker. Ning Rongrong relied on her 9 treasures star-glazed pagoda to enhance herself. It was the same for Oscar. Therefore, in comparison, Bai Qinxiang did not have any support-type abilities. Her physical strength was not high, and her soul power was weak. That was why it was so difficult for her to reach the 16th step. Besides Tang San, among the 9 people, the most shocking one was Zhu Zhuqing. She reached the 46th step in one go, even higher than Dai Mubai. She was only 4 steps away from Tang San. One had to know that Tang San could pull out all the stops. 200,000-year soul bones, 1 external soul bone, and 1 skull bone. Coupled with his powerful physique, the mysterious heaven method, and 2 domains, he was able to reach the 52nd step in one go. However, Zhu Zhuqing was an agility-type warrior who only had 2 soul bones, yet she was able to reach the 46th level in one go? This meant that Zhu Zhuqing's physical strength had reached an extremely high level. Everyone blushed with shame when they saw this. However, when they thought about how Zhu Zhuqing's soul power was only 1 step away from rank 70, as well as Zhu Zhuqing's transformation, they understood. But they didn't understand. In the following month, Zhu Zhuqing's improvement could be said to be the most abnormal among the 9 people. Almost every time Zhu Zhuqing reached her limit, there would be an obvious improvement in the next level. This directly led to Zhu Zhuqing being only 1 step away from Tang San a month later. A month later, Tang San's limit reached the 87th step, and the rest of the people had obvious improvements. During this month, Tang San also discovered the secret of the Neptune's light. It was similar to the sinking of the sea. To be precise, he discovered it on the first day. Although we have to endure enormous pressure on every step, I've thought about it. If we gather the strength of 9 people and help 1 person, we should be able to reach the 100th step very quickly. We might even reach our destination in a short period of time. Because we are a team, if we want to pass through the Neptune's light and climb the steps, we must be united. But at the same time, the Neptune's light is also testing our own potential. The Neptune is a god, so the test he gave us must be based on each of our potential. In other words, we all have the potential to climb the test steps, but we need each of us to stimulate our potential. These days, I think everyone has felt that under the pressure of the Neptune's light, our soul power has increased very quickly, especially after climbing the limit steps. The speed of cultivation will increase greatly. This is actually equivalent to stimulating our potential. If Wang Feng was here, he would be able to understand Tang San's words, just like Hu Laiina. He could see the key point of this test. The rest of the people more or less understood. So, we need to improve ourselves as much as possible in this year. If we can't complete it at the last moment, then we will combine the strength of the team and help the latter complete the test together. After all, not everyone could perfectly stimulate their potential. Everyone's willpower and spirit were different. Tang San felt that he could stimulate his potential in this state. But he couldn't make everyone climb as hard as he did, and do nothing but become stronger and cultivate. That was why he considered using the team's strength to help the other party in the end. The premise was that most of the steps in front must be climbed as hard as possible. The rest of the people naturally agreed. And a month later, Zhu Zhuqing was the first to reach rank 70. The rest of the people also leveled up one after another. After reaching rank 70, the Sea God's Island's great consecrator, Possessi, appeared. This was the second time they had seen Possessi. "I'm here today to look for her." Possessi still had a gentle smile on his face as he looked at Zhu Zhuqing. According to the rules of the sea god, the participants who qualify for the black rank test have a chance to obtain a god-bestowed soul ring. A god-bestowed soul ring can allow you to obtain the soul skill you need the most, as well as the highest soul ring age you can withstand. In short, the stronger you are, the stronger the soul ring you obtain. At this point, Possessi gently opened his hand, revealing a golden bead. The bead was pure gold, but it was a bit like glass. There was a faint airflow flowing inside, and it was very beautiful. God-bestowed soul ring? There's such a good thing? Ma Hongjun scratched his head. Doesn't that mean that if I can withstand a 100,000-year soul ring, I can obtain a 100,000-year soul ring? Possessi smiled and nodded. Everyone was shocked. This is a great thing. Who would have thought that the black rank test would have such a benefit? Tang San nodded in his heart. Master was right. Although the sea god's island was extremely dangerous, one could obtain unimaginable opportunities. These were all things that were difficult to obtain just by relying on cultivation alone. Child, your talent is very special. Possessi looked at Zhu Zhuqing gently. Your willpower is not inferior to mine at all. You can improve so much in just a month. I didn't have such improvement back then. Each of you has a chance to obtain a god-bestowed soul ring. Now, on behalf of the sea god, I will bestow it to you. I hope you can obtain the soul ring you want. Zhu Zhuqing was stunned. She looked at the golden bead with a trace of determination in her eyes and nodded. End of chapter. Chapter 736. After that, Possessi waved her hand gently and threw the golden bead onto Zhu Zhuqing's head. In the next moment the bead cracked. It turned into a golden mist and landed on Zhu Zhuqing's body. Then, it slowly changed into the shape of a soul ring. The color changed from white, yellow, purple, and black slowly. A 90,000-year soul ring. Tang San looked at the final black color that was fixed at the end. There was even a trace of red mixed in. It was obviously a sign that it was almost 100,000 years, but it didn't become 100,000 years in the end. The amount of soul rings one can withstand is directly related to the strength of one's body. Zhu Qing's body is much stronger than that. Dai Mubai sighed. It's unbelievable, she's an agility type, Tang San nodded. Even if he reached rank 70, he wasn't confident that he could absorb a 100,000-year soul ring. But if he could, he had to rely on himself to absorb a 100,000-year soul ring. But at this moment, the 9 people didn't know that a warm current flowed out from Zhu Zhuqing's heart again. At this point, Zhu Zhuqing's body, which was originally unbearable, suddenly eased up. The soul ring suddenly became a 100,000-year soul ring. This scene caused everyone to be stunned. Even Possessi was stunned. 100,000-year soul ring? Possessi frowned and looked at Zhu Zhuqing. She clearly felt that Zhu Zhuqing's limit was 90,000-year soul ring, but it suddenly increased to 100,000-year soul ring. There seemed to be a special energy in her body that instantly repaired Zhu Zhuqing's body, which was already unable to withstand it, and raised it to a new level. This child indeed has a unique talent. Possessi smiled and looked at Zhu Zhuqing. At the same time, she looked at Ning Rongrong. Both of them could inherit her position as the High Priestess. However, in terms of innate talent, Zhu Zhuqing was definitely better than him. Under the light of the 100,000-year soul ring, Zhu Zhuqing exuded a peerless charm. Her skin seemed to be undergoing a baptism as a red light enveloped Zhu Zhuqing's body. Her martial soul, Dark Moon Fairy, gently jumped out. There were traces of red patterns all over her body, adding a touch of demonic beauty. What was different from before was that the Yue elves were originally cold and mysterious, but now it had a hint of life aura. The golden eyes swept across everyone inexplicably, gave them a special pressure. What a powerful martial soul. Possessi looked at it. It's obviously a dark element soul ring, but it has such a rich life aura of life. Everyone was shocked. Zhu Zhuqing's martial spirit was not like this a month ago. A martial soul ring. This month, it was a month. This month was month soul ring a month. Everyone was martial soul ring. Heart of the soul was a soul. It was her heart. It was the energy that had flowed out of her heart over the past month that had changed her and her martial soul. In fact, it was the meteoric tear that changed her. The meteoric tear couldn't change Wang Feng's martial soul because it was too advanced. There was no room for change. Absorbing the soul ring was only equivalent to changing from the growth stage to the mature stage. But Zhu Zhuqing's martial soul had been constantly climbing the stairs and exceeding its limits for more than a month. The energy that flowed out had slightly changed Zhu Zhuqing's martial soul, making it stronger. This was also the reason why Zhu Zhuqing could barely catch up with Tang San when she climbed the stairs. It was also because of the meteoric tear that Zhu Zhuqing was able to obtain a 100,000-year soul ring. The meteoric tear was powerful. As long as its function was activated, the changes it brought were obvious. Wang Feng had relied on the meteoric tear in the early stages and had improved tremendously. Moreover, the sooner he obtained the meteoric tear, the better. Wang Feng had relied on the meteoric tear to transform his body, which was equivalent to laying an extremely stable foundation. Everyone waited quietly. After about 2 days, Zhu Zhuqing completely absorbed the 100,000-year soul ring. It was not an exaggeration to say that the changes brought by the 100,000-year soul ring were earth-shattering. The most obvious change was, she became more beautiful. Her original cold and ethereal temperament had become more gentle, which symbolized life. Her skin and facial features had undergone a huge change. Zhu Zhuqing, who was already very beautiful, could be said to be at a higher level. Even if she didn't smile, she was still fascinating. Ning Rongrong was jealous. Qingqing, I'm jealous of you. Ning Rongrong took a bite of the sweet fruit and found that no matter how sweet it was sour in her mouth at this moment. Shun Lingqi and Bai Qinxiang covered their mouths and snickered. They found that among the 3 girls in Shrek's 7 monsters, except for Xiao Wu who had not fully recovered yet, these 2 girls were also very close to each other. Especially Ning Rongrong, who was very honest and never hid a lot of things. But when they heard from Oscar and Ma Hongjun that when they first met Ning Rongrong, she was actually a very unruly and pretentious girl. She looked gentle and soft, but was actually a spoiled and unruly young lady. Now that she had changed like this, to be exact, there was only one person who could make Ning Rongrong change like this. Okay, I know. Zhu Zhuqing nodded gently. Ning Rongrong. Ning Rongrong hugged Zhu Zhuqing's arm a little coquettishly. Qingqing, what do you mean? Aren't you going to comfort me? You've become beautiful again, what should I do? Zhu Zhuqing wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. She could only subconsciously touch her heart. What are you doing? Touching your chest. Are you saying that I'm not as old as you? Ning Rongrong snorted. Qingqing, you're too much. Zhu Zhuqing, that's not what I meant. Zhu Zhuqing suddenly looked at the sea and changed the topic. By the way, did you guys notice that the Golden Generation and their teachers haven't appeared for more than a month after they went into the sea that day? Everyone was stunned by her words. For the past month, they had been immersed in cultivation and climbing the stairs, so they didn't realize it. Now that they heard Zhu Zhuqing's words, they were abruptly awakened. Yes, they hadn't come out for more than a month. 1 month. Even if they're sea soul masters, they can't stay in the sea for a month, right? Ma Hongjun looked out at the calm sea. The deeper we go, the more sea soul beasts there are. And the pressure in the sea is just as strong. I think they have to use the sea god's lock for their test. When I was free, I heard from a few purple-robed soul masters who delivered food to us that the sea god's lock was used to trap the powerful sea soul beasts. Staying in the sea for a month, even their soul power couldn't withstand it. Hee, maybe they've already died in the sea. Ning Rongrong's attention was successfully diverted. She looked at the sea and said, "The sea is much more dangerous than us. That white-robed Popediff, it's better if he's eaten by those ferocious sea soul beasts in the deep sea." Zhu Zhuqing didn't say anything, but deep in her eyes, there was a trace of worry that she couldn't get rid of. For the past month, she was the only one who had been secretly observing the situation in the sea. But she still didn't see that figure floating to the surface. P.S. From now on, I'll make sure to update at least 7 times a day. 10 times a day is too tiring, and my eyes can't stand it. End of chapter. Chapter 737. Sea God's Mountain, Sea God's Hall. Possessi gazed at the calm sea. His red robe fluttered in the wind. The seahorse Douluo stood beside him. The sea god's lock hasn't been retracted. This means that they're still sinking. The seahorse Douluo was deep in thought. I've sent someone to take a look. The 3 of them have already sunk to a depth of 300 meters. It's a little exaggerated. Given their cultivations, it's very difficult for them to reach this depth in a month. As for Wang Wu, the people I've sent can't find out where he is. This means that he has sunk to a depth that even purple-clothed sea soul masters can't reach. He's at least 1,500 meters deep. The seahorse Douluo was in disbelief. The sea god's lock test was much more difficult than the sea god's light for land-based soul masters. He's sunk to a depth of more than 2,000 meters. Possessi's eyes flashed. But there's a very serious problem. They're not sea soul masters. They can't cultivate in the sea. Even sea soul masters can't cultivate in the sea for long periods of time, let alone at such depths. Unless they're sea soul beasts. The seahorse Douluo was shocked. This was a very serious problem. Cultivating in the sea and cultivating in the sea were 2 different things. They can't be sea soul beasts. There's only one possibility. Possessi's eyes flashed with wisdom. They have some kind of divine item that allows them to cultivate in the sea. Only then can they cultivate quickly and reach such a level in a month. The person who has a divine item should be Wang Wu. Could this be the reason why the sea god chose him? At this moment, Possessi suddenly looked at the sky. The blue sky was now filled with dark clouds. The ring-shaped sea is no more than 6,000 meters deep. His test target is 5,500 meters deep. There are 3 sea soul beasts that are very difficult to deal with. To Wang Feng, his greatest gain in this month was not the increase in his soul power. It was the increase in his spiritual power. Wang Feng realized that under this kind of pressure, his mind power increased the fastest. This was because he had to face the pressure of the sea and the chains at all times in the sea. There was no chance for him to catch his breath. However, since you haven't reached your limit, you won't collapse right away. That's why your mental power is always in a tense state. Most importantly, this kind of dry cultivation was like a bottomless ocean. It was like an abyss, bringing immense mental pressure. The deeper he went, the more obvious the pressure became. In this state, Wang Feng's spiritual power cultivation increased rapidly. On the contrary, the increase in his soul power wasn't that great. 2 months later, Hulaina was the first to reach level 70. When he reached rank 70, Possessi sank into the sea and found Hulaina. He gave her a god-bestowed soul ring. Hulaina had obtained a 60,000-year soul ring, which was the limit of what she could bear. In the second month, the distance between the 3 of them had increased to more than 400 meters. It was sinking at a rate of several meters per day. Wang Feng was already close to 3,000 meters. The reason why he was sinking so fast was because he had not reached his limit. At a distance of 3,000 meters, Wang Feng used his soul power and removed his mysterious underworld armor. At the same time, he used his martial soul to strengthen himself and resist the pressure of the seawater as he pulled the 3 sea gods' locks that weighed several thousand kilograms each. This kind of strengthening consumed a lot of soul power. This was because whether it was the deification, thorn lotus, or soul-devouring blood wings, they could only last for an hour. An hour later, Wang Feng had to reapply them on himself. At 3,500 meters, his soul bone gradually revealed itself and helped Wang Feng bear the pressure and strengthen him. At the 4,000 m mark, Wang Feng gradually activated the power of the blood mark. This was also the 3rd month. Wang Feng reached a depth of 4,000 meters, and his soul power finally reached rank 69. At this time, Yen and Evil Moon both broke through rank 70 and obtained God-bestowed soul rings. Evil Moon obtained a 60,000-year soul ring, while Yen obtained a 70,000-year soul ring. They had both exceeded their limit. A normal 7th soul ring could only withstand 50,000-year soul rings. Hulaina's rank also increased by 2 ranks. On average, she increased by 1 rank every month and reached rank 73. After level 70, this was also a very frightening cultivation speed. At the same time, the 3 of them had sunk more than 500 meters. 3 months of results could be said to be above the limit. And in these 3 months, Tang San and the others above also had major breakthroughs. Among them, Tang San had the biggest change. Because in the 3rd month, or to be precise, not long after the beginning of the 3rd month, he had already reached rank 70 and then absorbed a God-bestowed soul ring. Tang San absorbing the God-bestowed soul ring was much more dangerous than Zhu Zhuqing. Zhu Zhuqing had the protection of the meteoric tier, which reduced the impact of the 100,000-year soul ring to a minimum. She successfully absorbed it in 2 days, but in the following month, she still continued to absorb the power of this God-bestowed soul ring. Tang San, on the other hand, braved the danger and spent close to 2 months before he finished absorbing the 100,000-year soul ring that was a God-bestowed soul ring. Because it was a complete absorption, it took a long time, much longer than Zhu Zhuqing. But in fact, the pain was the same. And in comparison, Zhu Zhuqing's body was not as strong as Tang San's, so the pain she suffered from absorbing the 100,000-year soul ring was much greater. It was only the meteoric tier that could help her recover. In the 4th month, Wang Feng had sunk to a depth of 5,000 meters. Ring-shaped sea area, deep sea. 5,000 meters. Wang Feng couldn't describe the scene at a depth of 5,000 meters. Because it was black. Incomparably dark. He couldn't see anything. Light could no longer illuminate this place. In fact, there was no light at a depth of 1,000 meters. Above 1,000 meters, the sea god mountain still had brown light and the light of the chains, which allowed Hulaina and the other 2 to see the situation around them clearly. But at a depth of 5,000 meters, it was black. Wang Feng could only rely on his strong spiritual power to sense the position of the sea god mountain and calculate the distance in his heart. Sinking at such a depth, Wang Feng felt that the pressure on his mind might be greater than his body. In the endless darkness and the extremely unfamiliar bottom of the sea, he couldn't see anything. He still had to pull 3 chains to sink, and his body had to bear the terrifying pressure of the sea at all times. His mind was in a state of high tension, and it was very likely that his mind would collapse in the next second. When a person's mind collapsed, their will would also disintegrate. Even if they could still resist the pressure of the sea and the chains, they would not be far from death. Plus more than 4 months of enduring such an environment, it was too abnormal. Even with Wang Feng's spiritual power, he felt a little dizzy. End of this chapter. Chapter 738. In fact, Wang Feng felt that he had reached his limit when he was 4,500 meters down. He had used all sorts of enhancements, including 400,000-year soul bones, the power of the blood pattern, and his dark angel martial soul. Only then did he manage to reach 5,000 meters. Wang Feng had to surpass his limit for the remaining 500 meters. At this point, he realized that the weight of the chains seemed to have increased by many times. With his spiritual power tensed up, it was as if all his actions and senses were magnified by more than 10 times. Wang Feng had no doubt that even rank 95 and 96 titled Douluo would be crushed to death at this position. Over these 4 months, Wang Feng had also improved. To be precise, he had improved even more than Hu Laiina and the rest. However, because he was too strong, these improvements were not significant to him. Only his spiritual power had improved tremendously over the past 4 months. It had already turned into a torrential river, taking the shape of a lake. At this moment, Wang Feng was quietly floating 5,000 meters under the sea. His body was shining with intense light. This was his complete form, just like when he fought the demon whale. If he did not maintain this form, Wang Feng would not be able to survive in such a place. He could only retreat. Under the pressure of the sea, Wang Feng's spiritual power could not extend too far. Wang Feng was silent as he pulled the 3 chains. These 500 meters, Wang Feng was much stronger than when he had first entered the sea. Whether it was his spiritual power or his physical body, they were both stronger. However, it was more difficult than ascending to the heavens to reach these 500 meters in less than a month. This was Wang Feng's limit. His soul power rank was nearing rank 70. Over the past 4 months, Hu Laiina and the rest had increased by at least 5 rank. However, he had only managed to increase by 1 rank. However, this was still very fast. Otherwise, Wang Feng would only be able to increase by 1 rank after half a year. If I use the blue flag, I can descend another 500 meters without expending too much energy. However, this is meaningless. Wang Feng pondered. These last 500 meters were an opportunity for him to improve. At the very least, he had to reach rank 70. His body had to be strengthened. Otherwise, even with his cultivation speed, he would not be able to reach rank 70 in a year. Once he reached rank 70, he would be able to obtain a soul ring. He could use it to reach the 1001st step. After settling his thoughts, Wang Feng continued to ponder. Every time his will approached the 0 boundary point, Wang Feng would think of the goal he had worked so hard for. He also had a goal that he could work towards. Let's not talk about the distant. If he died just like that, 3 years later, it would be hard to say whether Tang San and the others were dead or alive. He did not know what would happen to Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing. No one knew what would happen to the martial spirit palace. Wang Feng wanted to reverse the ending he knew. In this Douluo world, Wang Feng also changed many of the regrets he had when he first read the original work. This was what Wang Feng had always wanted to do. This was the reason why she wanted to destroy Bibidan's deity position. If Bibidan did not have the deity position, then her ambition would no longer exist. Whether it was the 3 major sects or Tang San, they would all change. Many people would not die. Of course, the most important thing was still himself. Wang Feng would always remember this. Wang Feng's faith and will remained in his heart as he continued to compose himself. At a position of 5,000 meters, even 1 more meter of pressure would be infinitely magnified. Every time he reached the limit, Wang Feng would use the blue flag to reduce the pressure on the spot and cultivate to recover. Then he continued to sink slowly. In this process, every few meters, Wang Feng's body would make a sound like bones breaking. His skin began to overflow with blood, his eyes were bloodshot, and his whole body seemed to be undergoing drastic changes. Layer after layer of blood scabs solidified from Wang Feng's body and shattered under the pressure of the seawater. Endless destruction, rebirth. The power of the meteoric tear poured out of his heart continuously. Wang Feng used his spiritual power to control this energy containing majestic vitality and washed all over his body. This kind of pain had exceeded the limit that a soul master could bear. It was not the kind of pain that made you die instantly, but as you sank, you slowly felt that you were about to die, and the pain would increase every second. Every time Wang Feng felt that he was infinitely close to death, he would use the blue flag instinctively to let his body recover quickly. Every moment it was as if he was walking on the tip of the knife of death. Fortunately, there was the meteoric tear and the blue flag. This gave Wang Feng a chance to breathe. For every meter he sank, Wang Feng would rest for at least 1 to 2 hours. This kind of torture could easily destroy a person's willpower. Finally, after more than 20 days, Wang Feng reached a position of 5,500 meters. At this moment, his body was emitting a layer of faint light, and his skin seemed to have undergone another layer of baptism. With his eyes closed, he seemed to have entered a state of selflessness. He was relying solely on his life's instinct to pull the 3 chains to reach his destination. But his aura was also very weak, and at the moment when he reached his destination, 3 different roars penetrated the boundless seawater and woke Wang Feng up. In these 20 days, Wang Feng's willpower was fighting with himself, and his body's strength was fighting with the pressure of the seawater and the weight of the chains. In his sea of consciousness, Wang Feng's spiritual power had reached a terrifying level. Big river! Big river! It was flowing with silver light, and it was extremely bright. A green lotus, in the middle of the big river, was emitting faint light. Wang Feng, who was awakened, seemed to have awakened from his chaotic state, and all his memories were instantly recalled and surged into his brain. It's the sea spirit beasts from the bottom of the sea. Wang Fengxian was shocked and immediately understood his situation. The trident between his eyebrows flashed with a faint light, and at the same time, he had completed 1/3 of the 3 parts of the first test. But there was no reminder because he had not completed the first test. This aura, it should be at least 80,000 years of strength. Wang Feng took a deep breath and looked at the blood-red holes in front of him. Obviously, those were the eyes of the 3 sea spirit beasts. Wang Feng did not hesitate. Before he could feel the changes in his body, he immediately used the blue flag to remove the pressure of the seawater, and at the same time, he unlocked the sea god's lock, and the boundless pressure was instantly removed. The pressure of the past 5 months was suddenly reduced by half, and Wang Feng wanted to roar to the sky. Wang Feng quietly looked at the 3 sea spirit beasts in front of him. At this moment, the dull sound of the seawater stirring could be heard. In this kind of seawater, only the sea spirit beasts could cause the seawater to stir. Suddenly, the dark bottom of the sea lit up with spots of light. This light was not emitted by Wang Feng, but by the 3 sea spirit beasts. The first to appear in front of Wang Feng was a blood flood dragon that was more than 40 meters long. Its shape was similar to the blue lightning tyrant dragon, and it contained an extremely dense murderous aura. On the dragon's body, there was a sea god's lock that was as thick as an ancient tree. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.